Welcome into another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton. Wasserman here with our full preview of Week 3 in college football. And Dalton, we are back to doing 11 games. 11 games in Week 1, only did 9 in Week 2, but with a loaded Week 3 slate, we had to do 11 games again. I believe we have 3 games between ranked teams this week and a bunch of other ones that are absolutely massive games too. Had to break out all of the helmets, and again, can't even fit them on the front of the desk right here because we have so many games to talk about today.
Just enough room for them. Just mini helmets everywhere, right? 11 big games we have here. And does it feel like, I feel like 2 big themes this week. One, there's some teams going into some big games and some tough road environments. I think that's going to be a big difference here this week. Could be the home field advantage. The other thing, does this feel like, I know we've had a couple of big out-of-conference games. Does this feel like SEC kickoff week?
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Just the SEC with so many of these matchups that we're going to see every single week. And even with a couple here without a conference matchups as well, I think you've got just a lot of fun in that conference. Obviously, it's the most talented, deepest conference in the country, but we've seen some teams who've had some struggles lately, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Some have to keep the momentum going. Some have to bounce back. It's going to be a wild week in the SEC, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We had one SEC game last week, Ole Miss, Kentucky. I don't think there's any other SEC games.
That was the only in-conference one.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, in-conference. But then there's also some other massive ones this week, too. You got Ole Miss, Arkansas. You got Florida against LSU, the biggest game of the week probably, in Georgia against Tennessee. A lot to talk about here today. I want to remind you guys, though, a lot of the stats and numbers we're going to go over on the show are available to you guys with a PFF Plus subscription. And as of right now, you can get PFF Plus for 25% off if you use the promo code PFFCFB25. We are actually in a competition, Dalton, with all the other shows here at PFF, the NFL show, NFL SC. TikTok even has their own promo code too. Obviously, the Fantasy Podcast too. So we're trying to win that competition. So please, if you're going to use a promo code, use the PFF College Football promo code right now, PFFCFB25, to get 25% off your PFF Plus annual subscription. You get all the numbers and grades for every player and team in college football and the NFL, the same numbers that every FBS team subscribes to and every NFL team subscribes to. You can also get access to our 2026 NFL Mock Draft Simulator, where you can draft a full 7 rounds for the 2026 NFL Draft with over 450 prospects in that mock draft simulator ranked for you guys by the great Trevor Sycamore, our lead draft analyst, and of course the best betting tools on the planet and the best fantasy football tools on the planet with the PFF Plus app that you could download right now on Apple and Google Play Store too. So again, get it 25% off right now using code PFFCFB25 and help the PFF College Football Show win that competition between all the other shows here at PFF. All right, Dalton. Our records for the year, you and I are currently tied with a 12-9 record so far. Trying to get a little bit better than that this week. It's kind of been a slow start for us in week 1 and 2, but we'll see what happens in week 3 here.
College football always gets turned upside down right when you think it won't, right? And everything, a lot of things that we thought we were going to expect these first couple weeks of the season, it's gone the way that college football always does. It's always chaotic. You never know what's going to happen week to week. And early in the year, it does feel like we're trying to get a read on a lot of these teams, right? You got a lot of teams with young quarterbacks, the transfer portal, and the collections of talent people are getting overnight. That adds a different factor to it. So, yeah, I think a lot of unexpected through the first 2 weeks, but we're going to try to get a gauge on it here. We got a lot of opportunities here to make that up.
Definitely. All right, the first game we're going to preview here in week 3 is a Friday night game between Colorado at Houston, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN on Friday night. Storylines to know is these are 2 programs looking to start their Big 12 slate on the right foot. Because both of them open their conference slates on Friday night against each other. The Buffaloes are currently 1-1 on the season. They lost to Georgia Tech by 7 in week 1, a team that's currently ranked in the PFF top 25, and they beat Delaware in week 2. The Cougars, meanwhile, are 2-0 for the first time in 7 years that Houston is 2-0 to start the season. They beat Stephen F. Austin and Rice in their first 2 games. Considering both these programs might be fighting and clawing their way to get to bowl eligibility at the end of the season, this could be a huge game for them in determining whether or not they can extend their season.
Yeah, I mean, the big news, I think, in this game that just dropped today as we're recording this is the fact that it appears Ryan Staub now is going to start at quarterback for Colorado. And, of course, there's just never a dull moment with Colorado football, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent or just something wild. So it adds a sense of intrigue to this game. They're already going on the road against a team that is 2-0. Willie Fritz has them feeling pretty good about themselves, especially on defense. And now Colorado, 2 games into it, or really a game and a half into their season, is making a quarterback change, and not the one that we thought they might make with Julian Lewis. And who knows if they're trying to protect him from playing too early or what. But it appears now that Ryan Staub is going to go for this team. And I think Colorado, Caden Salter obviously was named the starter. He was the starter in week 1 and 2. And it feels like they were always trying to get to a point where they knew who their quarterback was, at least in time for Big 12 play. Well, now after a half of football against Delaware, it's Ryan Staub, and I don't know what this is going to look like. It's like I said, it's never a dull moment there in Boulder, and we've got it again this week.
Well, I'll break that all down in just a second, but you have the other side of the ball with Houston's offense. Let's talk more about Connor Wigman, their quarterback, who we know will be the starter for Houston on Friday night against Colorado's defense.
Yeah, so the scores are lopsided, in Houston's first 2 games against Stephen F. Austin and against Rice, and they're just better than those teams, obviously. I think that's a big reason they've started 2-0, and I don't really feel like their offense is played at a big-time level yet, right? They have Connor Wigman, the Texas A&M transfer as a quarterback. Tanner Koziol, the tight end transfer from Ball State and then Wisconsin. He's really their best offensive player to me. Dean Connors is a good player in the backfield, but I don't feel like they've played that well offensively, especially on the offensive line. And I think one thing, the theme with Colorado is that they're very aggressive on defense. They run a ton of man coverage. They blitz at a high rate, and that man coverage is actually what I'm going to focus on. Right now, they run the second highest rate of man coverage in college football, right? You've got DJ McKinney outside, RJ Johnson outside, Preston Hodge in the slot, right? But, 2 big 6'2" corners on the outside, and it's Deion Sanders coaching you. You're going to be in press man coverage a lot. That's what they're doing. So I want to look at Connor Wigman in his career against man coverage because he's going to see a ton of it this year, and it's really been a struggle. I know a lot of this has been an SEC competition, but Colorado has a very good secondary, even with Travis Hunter gone now. 57 passing grade in his career against man coverage, only completing less than 46% of his passes, and it's that last number down there. 5 big-time throws, 8 turnover-worthy plays. Generally, when you've seen Connor Wigman against heavy man coverage teams, a little bit of a hard time throwing into those tight windows. So if Colorado can keep those windows tight, and Houston is not pass protected well through 2 weeks, I expect a lot of blitzing. I expect a lot of aggression from Robert Livingston, Colorado's defensive coordinator, in this game. There's other weeks where I would like to see him use more zone coverage and sit back a little bit more, but I actually think this is the right week for Colorado's defense, especially now with their offensive situation. Get aggressive, try to make things happen, try to force Wigman into bad throws, and get those turnovers, give Ryan Staub short fields to work with.
Yeah, so really it's all about, can Ryan Staub, for me, just seize the quarterback job right now, because he will be starting on Friday night, which is kind of crazy considering, Dalton, when we previewed Colorado going into the year, it's all about the quarterback competition, but it was between Caden Salter and Julian Lewis. Now out of nowhere in week 2, Ryan Staub seems to have taken over that job for now because he was really good against Delaware in week 2. Caden Salter was the only one who played in week 1 against Georgia Tech. All 3 of them played in week 2 against Delaware, and Staub, out of the 3 of them, was the best out of all of them. Caden Salter had a 57.3 passing grade against Delaware on 23 dropbacks. Julian Lewis, a 68.7 passing grade on only 5 dropbacks against Delaware. And then Ryan Staub on 13 dropbacks, he had an 85.5 passing grade. He had 3 big-time throws on only 13 dropbacks with also a turnover-worthy play in there too. He completed 7 of his 11 passes for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. He'll make his second start of his career this Friday night against Houston, the redshirt sophomore. But it also appears that Colorado's quarterback situation is still fluid. So Ryan Staub, while he is starting this game against Houston, it's not a guarantee he will be the starting quarterback for the rest of the year for Colorado. So really, I'm interested in seeing how does Ryan Staub look, and can he seize this job now? Now he's getting the start on Friday.
Yeah, and we saw in certain games last year, and we've seen it through 2 games this year, that Houston's secondary is pretty good. They lost a couple of big-time transfers, right? Well, A.J. Halsey, right? Jeremiah Wilson went to Florida State. But their secondary is pretty good. Willie Fritz has always got a solid, fundamentally sound defense that doesn't give up explosive plays. And I'm just curious again, I think the one reason, I'll tell you this again, the reason that I picked Georgia Tech to beat Colorado in week 1, and what I'm still concerned about heading into week 3 is just, what is their offensive identity? What do we know Colorado to be on offense? Even on defense, okay, maybe they lost some talent from last year, but I know what they're trying to do. I'm not exactly sure what the identity. Maybe with a whole week of game planning with Ryan Staub as the quarterback, it looks a little bit different. They go back to more of the quick game and some of the concepts they used with Shedeur Sanders last year. I really do think through 2 weeks that they have run the ball well with Micah Welsh and Kalen Taylor in the backfield. I think that's going to play a big part. But without Salter on the field, you lose the option threat. Staub is not nearly as mobile as Salter, so it's going to be a little more traditional. Once again, I think the spotlight is on Pat Shurmur to see now what he can do with a guy we thought was their third-string quarterback and making only his second career start.
Yeah, definitely. Houston right now, I know it's been against not great competition in weeks 1 and 2 against Stephen F. Austin and Rice, but Houston right now has the 3rd best coverage grade in the country, with a 91.4 mark, only behind Minnesota and Maryland right now. So Houston's secondary has looked really good through 2 weeks, but obviously this is the toughest test this week against Colorado. Dalton, ultimately, who will win this Friday night game in the Big 12 opener between Colorado and Houston?
If I had an honest answer for you, which I try to stay honest on this show, if I had an honest answer, I would tell you I have no idea. The Colorado quarterback situation, it just throws a wrench in it because we've seen so little of Staub. And yes, he played well last week, but he played well against Delaware, right, which just moved up from the FCS this year to Conference USA, playing the first year in the FBS. I was back and forth on this. I do think for one thing, it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to show up and play well. I think this could be honestly a race to 20 points. I was back and forth. I flipped this the last minute, probably 2 hours before the show. I'm going Houston 20-16. I'm going to take the home team. I'm going to take the team that at least Houston might not be great on offense, but at least I know who's going out there and I know kind of what to look for with Wigman, with Koziol at tight end. He's one of the best tight ends in the country. Dean Connors in the backfield is a hard runner. He's a physical guy. Wide receiver is going to be a big question in this game against Colorado's corners, but this really might be about the team that just wins field position and the turnover battle. If they can turn over a young quarterback in Ryan Staub, or is it going to be Connor Wigman making the mistakes against the man coverage? I'm going to stick with Houston. Really home field advantage, and I do like their defense, and I have no idea what we're getting out of Staub. Houston 20-16.
I'm going Colorado, actually. I'm taking Colorado 24-21. I know there's a bit of a quarterback controversy right now down there in Boulder, but I think Colorado's pass defense that you just broke down right there has a big, big advantage over Connor Wigman in this game with the amount of man coverage they run and how good I think that secondary can be for Colorado. And while Houston's secondary has looked good through 2 games, again, it was Stephen F. Austin and it was Rice. And last year, Houston had the 90th coverage grade in America. So I think Ryan Staub might have found something in that game against Delaware. We'll see. And also, if he isn't playing well, they could throw in Kane Salter. They could throw in Julian Lewis. Again, I don't think it's over. I don't think Ryan Staub is guaranteed to be the guy the rest of the year. So I'm taking Colorado to win this game. It's going to be a low-scoring game, I agree with you, but I have Colorado 24-21.
I think you could still absolutely use Salter even in running situations, right? The option threat with Salter, the rushing threat. We even saw that against Georgia Tech, and there was times where he didn't run when he probably could have. But the level of athlete that he is, that's not a guy you just want playing no snaps. I think there's times, short yardage, option situations, use him if it's more as a wildcat or if he's just your quarterback by halftime of this game, then so be it. But it's such a fluid situation. And that's the big thing for me is, again, a lack of offensive identity. And Salter is so much different now than Staub and so much different than if we ever see Julian Lewis this year. I don't know what to expect from Colorado. At least, again, with Houston, I know what to expect, but they do have a good challenge in front of them. So I get the logic and still rolling with Colorado, but I think we get a low-scoring game.
Yeah, it should be a really fun game on Friday night. All right, let's get to the Saturday slate right now, starting off with number 12 Clemson at Georgia Tech, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Storyline really is, can Clemson pull it together right now? Because I had Clemson winning it all in the preseason. I had them as the number 1 team in the country preseason. Dalton, you had them as your runner-up, I believe, right, to Alabama in your national title game too. So even though they started off as the number 1 team in the country, and I think it was number 4 for the AP poll, Clemson has looked really shaky through 2 weeks so far. They opened their year with a home loss to then number 9 LSU, and they trailed by 13 points against Troy this past week too. They did mount a big second half comeback to win that game 27-16, but that's the type of game that you want to see Clemson dominate all the way through. They did not look dominant until the second half of that game against Troy. They now enter a pivotal week 3 road game against Georgia Tech, and I know they're not ranked right now, Dalton. I would rank Georgia Tech right now. After their 2-0 start to the season, they beat Colorado in week 1. They are currently ranked in the PFF top 25. They're 2-0. It's not a game you want to play around with in your first road game for Clemson.
First road game, and Clemson, I think the story is really offensively, especially they just haven't played good football yet, right? They've got the Antonio Williams injury they're dealing with. They're struggling to run the football. And Georgia Tech, let's be honest, they know their identity. As long as there's Haynes King with the health question, but if he goes, they know exactly what they want to be. It's exactly what we saw against Colorado. They ran for 320 yards in that game. That's what they want to be. It's ball control, it's physicality, it's milking the clock, right? It's everything that really is primed for an upset bid. When you think about last year against Miami, and Haynes King couldn't even throw the ball in that game with a shoulder injury. They were bringing in Zach Pyron or Aaron Philo to come in and throw. I think it was Philo in that game too, to come in and throw the ball. He started the game last week against Gardner-Webb. You just look at a Georgia Tech team who knows who they are. And if they get to be who they are early in this game, Clemson might be on red alert here.
Tell me more about Clemson and really just what is going wrong with this offense right now.
Their offense right now is giving them a lot of the same problems as it did early last year, right? We had these same concerns when they lost to Georgia, and it was shaky early. The big game against App State, but that's App State. But I think the thing it starts, and it's the old phrase, it starts up front, Max. I just think their offensive line is not playing very well, and they've got veteran guys. There's 6 guys on this offensive line that get significant snaps because they rotate 3 guys between the 2 guard spots. They've always done that, but none of them are grading above a 68. Blake Miller is the highest one at 67.6. You lead that to the unit rankings. Out of the 136 teams in PFF grade on their offensive line, Clemson's number 100. They're number 103 in run blocking grade. Impact run blocking percentage, which is the percentage of time that you're getting a positive grade up front, 123rd. The run blocking, they just can't run the football. We've talked so much about the running backs being a weakness. Is it Adam Randall? Is it Gideon Davidson? Whatever's going, it doesn't even matter because they're not blocking well up front. Even, LSU is one thing, but even against Troy, they didn't run block well, and they're just barely inside the top 100 in pass blocking grade and pressure percentage. So you're talking about, look, Georgia Tech, Jordan Vandenberg and those guys, is it the best defensive line in the country? No, but it's good enough to compete with a unit playing like that. This team has to be better up front. They have to be more physical. They have to be able to have balance and run the ball in this offense. And the lack of Antonio Williams, in I don't know if he's going to play this week with his injury after missing the last game and a half, but if they don't have the deep ball and they can't run the football, then you've got a small window of things that you can do. Because right now, Clemson, they're not completing the deep ball because everyone's sitting back and going, okay, run the ball or check it down, make Cade Klubnik work for it. They don't have balance, and their trench play right now is not great up front. It's going to have to be better in this game. If their offensive line, to me, plays the way that they did the first 2 weeks, especially because we've seen overall with Clemson, Max, I've watched them play 6 quarters of bad offensive football and then 2 quarters of decent offensive football against Troy. And Troy kind of just got rattled in the second half and it fell apart and they made mistakes. This has not been a good offense so far. The entire operation, Cade Klubnik bailed him out of the Troy game, but the offensive line has not been good. There's not much explosiveness in the run game. Adam Randall's had a couple of nice runs, but there's not much going there, especially before contact. And then the Antonio Williams injury as the veteran in that receiver. There's a lot to be concerned about here with Clemson. And one thing I'm concerned about, and you're going to talk about Georgia Tech's offense, Haynes King and all that. Clemson, time of possession is a major issue, and it's a major issue in this game. I think through their 2 games, they're averaging only 25 minutes of time of possession. And against last week, I think it was only 27. They lost time of possession last week against Troy. So if you lose time of possession that heavily in this game, you're playing into Georgia Tech's hands. They have to establish some balance. They got to play better in the trenches.
They really do. They really, really do. And you mentioned the Antonio Williams injury for Clemson. I'm worried a little about Georgia Tech, too, because Haynes King did not play in week 2 against Gardner-Webb due to a nagging lower body injury, which is understandable if you go back and watch that game against Colorado because of how much he was used as kind of a battering ram for Georgia Tech in their offense in that game. He ran 20 times for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Buffaloes, another 6 first downs coming on the ground. he entered the year with a shoulder injury too, and now he's got a lower body injury that kept him out of that game against Gardner-Webb. While his backup quarterback in Aaron Philo is a talented passer, he looked really good against Gardner-Webb, he doesn't provide the same dynamism as a runner that Haynes King has. And we've seen Clemson's run defense have some issues last year, too, with mobile quarterbacks like Lenora Sellers. Head coach Brent Key did say that he expects Haynes King to be practicing this week, and he was kind of a game-time decision last week against Gardner-Webb. I think it really came down to he probably could have played against Gardner-Webb, but they knew, hey, we're going to be able to take care of this game with or without Haynes King. Let's keep him healthy, let him rest for a week, and then play this game as Clemson where we really do need him. But if Haynes King is out or even not close to 100%, that's a distinct advantage, I think, for Clemson's defense, too. So really my matchup to watch is how healthy will we see a Haynes King be, or will we see Haynes King at all on Saturday?
I think you're going to see him. And I believe Brent Key even said King was suited up, and if we needed him for any reason to play, he could have played. But I think the smart thing to do is, look, save him for Clemson, save him for the biggest game of the year maybe for this team, right? And if you start 1-0 in the ACC with a win over Clemson, all of a sudden you feel like a contender because it's going to take everything Haynes King has to win this game. It's good to see Malik Rutherford back healthy. He played well last week. So this Georgia Tech offense, if King is 100%, they're fully loaded to try to really wear down Clemson here. And I think one guy I really want to see on Clemson's defense, see how he responds in this game. The linebacker Sammy Brown, the sophomore, right? He's their highest graded run defender other than Peter Woods on this team. Wade Woodaz, their other linebacker, he played against Georgia Tech 2 years ago. Sammy Brown has never seen Georgia Tech, and I've told you before, linebacker is the hardest position to play against this team with all of the motion, with all of the option, with the way that you have to read it and read to the football and stick to your assignment. Sammy Brown's the guy I'm really looking for, how much Georgia Tech attacks him specifically with all sorts of run concepts and see just how he responds and if he can fit this thing upright, because that's always a problem with Georgia Tech is how your linebackers are going to respond to all the different looks you get.
And I know, they, like I said, they did rest Haynes King. I think that's what happened last week, but even so, he's going to be at least not 100%, I don't think, in this game against Clemson. And in that game against Colorado, he was great on the ground, but only a 61.7 passing grade against Colorado, too. So that shoulder injury, now this lower body injury for Haynes King, I do not think we'll see 100% Haynes King on Saturday, which could be a big factor in determining who wins or loses this ballgame. Dalton, ultimately, will Clemson get their season back on track against Georgia Tech, or will they fall to 1-2 on the season after entering the year a top 5 team in the country?
Boy, oh boy, does Clemson need this game. They really need this game, not only for the sake of getting the first ACC win and staying in the driver's seat and proving that they're okay, like they're okay after a loss and then a tough, weird win against Troy. You know, Haynes King, through the injury, he's kind of proved through injuries and through just certain performances he's had, he's also proven to us that he's one of the toughest players in college football. And you know, I'm gonna stick to the same thing I said in that first game. I feel like I know Cade Klubnik's really good. I know we have TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco. I'm not sure if Antonio Williams is playing in this game, if he'll be back or not. I guess Clemson sort of has an identity, but when I watch them, I don't feel like they do. Georgia Tech has an identity. And if Haynes King is healthy, they can stick to that as long as possible. They're one of the best time of possession teams in the country. Clemson's one of the worst time of possession teams in the country. They're not stringing drives together consistently. Georgia Tech can do that and control this game on the ground. And we know Georgia Tech's got one big upset in them a year at least. I'm taking the Yellow Jackets. I'm going to do it. I think going into Atlanta, Clemson, the obvious way that they win this game is just that Cade Klubnik's the best player on the field, which is cool. If they do that and Georgia Tech's pretty vulnerable in the secondary, then fine. As we say all the time with Georgia Tech, if they get into that identity early and they're controlling the pace of the game, and look, they even got to do it against Colorado when they had three turnovers early in the game, right? And they recovered from that. They play a clean game, and they get to run in the ball against this defense. And again, I think a big matchup, Sammy Brown and Wade Wood as a linebacker. If they can get in on those guys and get to the second level, I'll take Georgia Tech to pull it off 27-24.
Wow. All right, you're selling all stock on Clemson right now then.
I still like their defense. Their defense, if those two guys, especially Brown and Woodaz, play well, then you got another situation. Anytime you can force Haynes King into obvious passing third and long, you feel good. I feel good about their defense. This offense is not clicking in any way whatsoever, and it's if they don't sustain drives early, and this time of possession gets to a point, like let's say they come out of the first half and the time of possession is 20-10, Clemson's on DEFCON 5. I mean, just absolutely panic mode because they just won't have the ball enough to make those high-flying plays.
I'm taking Clemson here, 31-21. Haynes King's banged up. I'm worried about him and just how close to fully healthy he will be in this game. And I think you look at Georgia Tech's defense. I mean, they're 57th in pass rush grade right now. They're 116th in coverage grade right now. This is a bad matchup. And Dabo Swinney recently said that Antonio Williams is day-to-day, and he's hoping he'll be back for this game against Georgia Tech. So it might have been also a case of Dabo thinking, okay, we can get by against Troy without Antonio Williams. He was close to being wrong there. But he might have been resting him for this game. So hopefully we see Antonio Williams back. I think that'll be a big return for that Clemson offense. So with that, the Clemson defense playing great this year, Haynes King not being 100%, and Georgia Tech's defense doesn't look like it has the defense to really take advantage of the problems with Clemson's offense right now. I think Clemson will win this game on the road 31-21 and get their year back on track.
If I'm Georgia Tech, and yes, they've had struggles in the secondary for a year plus, I'm sitting as far back as possible. I would just dare them. I would dare them to hand the football off. I would just dare them to do it. Just go, this is a moment. I don't always love bend but don't break. This is a bend but don't break moment. Don't let them have the deep ball. Keep it in front of you. Keep it in front of you. And if they, if the difference in this game for Clemson could be in the red zone where they'll have to earn it. If they can hold them to threes instead of sevens, I really like Georgia Tech's chances. And they have struggled. No question they've struggled on the back end, especially for more than a year. Just keep it in front of you, and you got a shot. It's kind of like what we talked about with USF and Florida last week. If you just keep yourself in it in the second, you don't have to play great. Just keep yourself in it. Then I really think Georgia Tech's at a big advantage.
So we differ on the first two games of this preview. The next one is Wisconsin at number 19, Alabama, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. A lot like Clemson, the storyline is, how will Alabama respond? So the Crimson Tide started the year number 4 in the country in our preseason top 25. Dalton had them winning the national title in the preseason predictions too. They were upset by Florida State in week 1, losing by 14 points, despite entering the game as basically 14-point favorites in that one. So Florida State really beat that spread by 28 points. The Crimson Tide did respond nicely to its embarrassing loss in week 1 with a week 2 73-0 win over Louisiana Monroe. But with all respect to the Warhawks, this week's game against a 2-0 Wisconsin squad will give a clearer picture of where Alabama and Kalen DeBoer's team kind of stands right now.
Absolutely. And I think defensively, for me especially now, I think this is a good matchup for their defense because we've talked so much about teams with mobile quarterbacks and option quarterbacks that give them problems, and it's really a discipline and assignment issue more than a talent issue. But their defense has to come out and play well in this game. I think that's a big thing for me. Offensively, I think it's been up and down. Obviously, it looked a lot better last week against ULM, but against a team like Wisconsin, you don't want to sit there and go. They have an opportunity to score points with us, and then we get another high-scoring game like we did against Florida State. I think I need to see Alabama's defense play better in this game. That's a huge story.
Absolutely. So tell me more of the offense for Alabama that only scored 17 points against Florida State in week 1. What is the issue with Alabama's offense, and how can Wisconsin exploit it?
So I don't know that there's an issue so much. It's just they're just adjusting to life with Ty Simpson and their offense instead. And I think I think Ty Simpson's been a big positive for it. I don't think he played that bad in the Florida State game. He was excellent last week, obviously, against Louisiana Monroe. He's poised, and I think the biggest thing, him being obviously the pocket quarterback, the polar opposite of Jalen Milroe last year, just protect him. Just protect him, right? I don't think they protected him well enough against Florida State. When they did, he still threw the ball well. But if you look at Ty Simpson's numbers in a clean pocket through 2 games, 89.6 passing grade. That's top 15 in the country. 88% adjusted completion rate. Fantastic stuff. 5 touchdowns, 2.6 second average time to throw. He's kind of just he's a pocket quarterback. He's not Jalen Milroe. He's going to win differently. Alabama's supposed to have an elite offensive line, right? He was clean last week because it's Louisiana Monroe, and he tore him to shreds. I think that could be the same situation this week against Wisconsin, and they didn't get very much pressure at all on Jalen Milroe last year against mostly the same offensive line. Now, Wisconsin is 9th in the country in pass rush grade right now, but they've played, I believe, Miami, Ohio, and Middle Tennessee. So we don't really know if Wisconsin has a good pass rush or not. They didn't against Alabama last year, and Milroe shredded them. I believe Ryan Williams should be back for for this game out of concussion protocol, we're hoping, obviously for Alabama's sake. But, I think that's just the big thing. If they protect Ty Simpson, he's been really, really good. I just think that's he's a pocket quarterback. You have to protect him up front. We'll see if Wisconsin's defensive line can step up.
So, once again, in one of these previews, mine is a quarterback dilemma that Wisconsin has right now because we don't know if Billy Edwards Jr. will be ready to go for this game. He suffered a sprained knee in week 1 against Miami of Ohio, kept him out of the rest of that game, and it kept him out of the week 2 game against Middle Tennessee this past weekend. Danny O'Neal, the backup quarterback, has kind of been up and down in his absence. He had a 38.4 passing grade during the rest of the Miami game before an 89.6 passing grade against Middle Tennessee this past weekend. But whoever it is, whether it be Billy Edwards Jr. or Danny O'Neal, and actually Luke Fickell said recently he doesn't really know a lot about Billy's status for this week, so it really seems like it's going to be a wait-and-see mode for him, whether or not he's ready to go for this Week 3 game against Alabama. Whoever it is, though, should be prepared to utilize their legs a little bit more than usual. Tommy Castellanos in Week 1 against Alabama ran for 80 yards and a touchdown, and in 3 of Alabama's 4 losses last year, the opposing quarterback ran for at least 55 yards. I know, Dalton, you broke that out down in the Week 1 preview that we did. Billy Edwards Jr., he averaged around 24 rushing yards per game on the ground last year at Maryland. Danny O'Neal averaged 23 yards per game on the ground at San Diego State last year. Billy Edwards Jr., if he is playing out there and if that sprained knee significantly hampers his mobility, I think it's a big advantage that Alabama's got.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, against more traditional offenses, and it's kind of the same thing we said last year in this game when it was Tyler Van Dyke going into the game. It was just it's more traditional. It's something Alabama's used to. It's something they feel like they can handle on defense. And Wisconsin doesn't have a loaded receiving core. They don't have a ton of speed on this team, so they really need to be perfect in their execution up front. But whichever one it's going to be, I think it's going to be a struggle offensively anyway, right? I mean, we've seen that even already from Wisconsin. They only scored 10 points offensively on Miami, Ohio, and 42 last week against Middle Tennessee, but they're just not very good. So, it's a step up. And if either of these quarterbacks can't step up, then it might look a little bit more like last year in this game.
Yeah. So in Week 1, Dalton, Alabama was favored by 2 touchdowns. They lost by 2 touchdowns. This week, they're favored by 3 touchdowns. Will they get upset again, or will they pull it off?
I think they'll pull it off. I think the 3 touchdown favorite there. I think that we'll see what their offense fully looks like with Ty Simpson. It's still a pretty solid Wisconsin defense with some veterans in the secondary, Ricardo Hallman, Preston Zachman, those guys. So I think there's a chance they could keep it in front of them. And Simpson obviously having far less mobility than Milroe last year, that gave Wisconsin a lot of problems. I've got Alabama 27-13. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a runaway 40-point win or something like that. I think Wisconsin's defense plays well enough to get some stops, but I just think offensively it's just not enough there. And it's how I felt about last year's game when these two teams played. There's just not, and now we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. They haven't looked great on offense through 2 weeks, especially the Miami, Ohio game in Week 1 told me a lot. When they only scored 10 points on offense in that game, it's not great. Now you're playing Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And, the other thing to this, too, Alabama's got to feel like, every game obviously, but they got to feel like this is a must-win game.
Yeah.
They've got a bye week and then they've got Georgia, right? I mean, you got to get geared up to play Georgia because Alabama in their current state that we've seen the first 2 weeks, I don't know if they're beating Georgia. Come out and prove something in this game, look a little bit better with the execution, especially on defense, then we start talking about that game. But I think Alabama's just a better team here. Obviously, I said that Week 1 and that burned me, but that was one where at least we go, okay, there was an offensive path to success for Florida State. I'm not really sure what that is here for Wisconsin.
I've got Alabama winning as well, but a little bit more. I actually have them right at that 21-point spread, 35-14 over Wisconsin. I'm with you. I think this is an Alabama defense that I thought was one of the best in the country heading into the season. Obviously didn't look great in that Week 1 loss to Florida State, but it was kind of a bad matchup with Tommy Castellanos' mobility. Wisconsin doesn't really have that in their offense right now. So I think we will see the Alabama defense dominate in this game. And I do think we'll see Ty Simpson, Ryan Williams, hopefully out there for that team too. They'll get back on track this week, and I think they'll have a convincing victory at home against Wisconsin. I think Alabama gets their season back on track, goes into their bye week with more confidence before a major game against Georgia in Week 5 of the season too. So I have Alabama winning 35-14. I think Alabama will look like the Alabama we thought they could be going into the season. All right, next up is the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 6, Georgia, at number 15, Tennessee. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. This is a massive, massive SEC opener for both teams. Both Georgia and Tennessee open their conference slates this Saturday, and what's being billed as maybe the biggest game of Week 3. Knoxville, Tennessee will host ESPN's College Game Day. 2 top 15 teams are squaring off. The Bulldogs are off to a 2-0 start this year after taking care of business against Marshall and Austin Peay. Tennessee is 2-0 as well after beating the Syracuse Orange and East Tennessee State in Week 2. The winner of this game really emerges as one of the favorites in the SEC right now, and honestly, one of the top teams in all of college football.
Big game for the standings. I think the story on each side for me is Georgia's first real game, right? They haven't played a real game yet. That's actually a competitive one. And for Tennessee, a team that coming into the year, especially with the quarterback situation, that we thought, okay, they're still going to be solid, but are they really SEC contenders? If they want to prove they're SEC contenders, and Joey Aguilar wants to prove that he's on that level, right, that he can be better than Nico and they can have a balanced offense and they can go to the playoff again, starts in this game. I mean, you couldn't ask for a bigger home game right here in Week 3 against the Georgia Bulldogs and a team, it's a weird matchup for them. They beat them. Georgia beat them in Georgia last year. Carson Beck played a great game, but you got 2 very different teams and 2 very different quarterback situations.
So tell me more about Gunnar Stockton and the Georgia offense right now. What have you seen from them through 2 games, and what should we know as they go against a really good Tennessee defense?
Yeah, it's hard to tell with them. I mean, it's same old Georgia where you talk about, okay, they want to run the football with Nate Frazier and those guys in the backfield. They want to get in the play-action game. I think they've used a lot of design rollouts and bootlegs to cut the field in half for Stockton and make his life a little easier, because he's still only made 3 career starts, right? The Notre Dame game in the playoff last year, and then the 2 starts this year against lesser opponents. Yeah. So you talk about Stockton being inexperienced. Now all of a sudden you're going on a tough road environment. It's his first tough road environment of his career at Rocky Top, 110,000 people or however many it is now just screaming in his ear. I think the big thing when you're playing against Tennessee, last year, the 3 games they lost were their 3 lowest coverage grades of the season, against Arkansas, against Georgia, and against Ohio State, okay? The big theme in those games is those teams were able to attack down the field. Remember Talon Green making all those throws for Arkansas. Obviously, Ohio State teed off on him early in the game. Carson Beck made great throws in that game. And you look at, to me, if you're going to beat this Tennessee defense, even without Jermon McCoy, right, and even without Ricky Gibson, they still have good corners on the outside now. Ty Redmond, Colton Hood, those guys are playing well. You have to attack this defense. You can't play soft. You can't play underneath. Go get them. So the number I'm looking at for his career, and it's a very short one right now, Gunnar Stockton on 10-plus yard throws. 76 passing grade. For the 10-plus yard throws, it's kind of just okay. 44% completion, 2 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. Here's a stat. Those 3 losses that Tennessee had last year, the opposing quarterbacks, all right, Green and Beck and Howard, they made 10 big-time throws, all right? The rest of the season, basically all of Tennessee's wins, only 5 out of the other, 10 games the rest of the season. So you have to be able to attack this defense deep down the field. Is Stockton willing and able to do that in this road environment against a very good defense, against a very good defensive line that's going to be in his face, right? Tyree West and Josh Josephs and those guys up front. I think you're talking about how passive is Stockton going to be in this environment. If he can stay aggressive and attack this secondary, that's really the best way to do it with Tennessee. And obviously we're going to get the first real test for all these new Georgia wide receivers as well.
Absolutely. So my match watching the other side of the ball is really Kirby Smart against Josh Heupel, head coach against head coach, because Josh Heupel, since he was hired in Tennessee in 2021, has had one of the most explosive offenses in college football. Since he was hired, the Volunteers have averaged 39 points per game. They were 6th in America in yards per play with 6.6 yards per play, 8th in America in EPA per play as well since 2021. This season doesn't look to be too much different from all those great numbers, too, because right now Tennessee is 3rd in America with a 91 offensive grade so far, despite losing so much talent from last year's team like Nico Imaliava, their star running back, and Dylan Sampson, who looked really good in Week 1 for the Cleveland Browns out there. Their top 3 receivers, I believe 4 starting offensive linemen, too. So much talent was lost, and yet Tennessee's offense is still humming along right now. However, whenever he's gone against Kirby Smart, in his career, it's a far different story. So Tennessee, I mentioned before, averaging 39 points per game since Josh Heupel was hired. Against Georgia, they averaged 14 points per game. They've never scored more than 17 points against Georgia in the 4 times Josh Heupel has gone against the Bulldogs. In those 4 games, Tennessee's offensive line has really struggled. Only a 39.9 pass blocking grade across those 4 games with a 35% pressure rate allowed. That really does not give Tennessee the time that they need to hit the patented vertical throws in Josh Heupel's offense. And Kirby Smart tends to be a little more aggressive defending Josh Heupel's offense than other teams, I should say. He plays cover 1 about 30% of the time against Josh Heupel. He only plays it 16% of the time in all other games since 2021. He really trusts that his corners will win on the outside in man coverage, which in turn frees up more defenders in the box to go and get after the quarterback. So Josh Heupel, again, one of the best offensive minds in the sport, but against Kirby Smart and against Georgia, they've never scored more than 17 points. The offense looks really good again this year for Tennessee, with Joey Aguilar playing really well. I believe a top 10 passing grade in all of college football. Yeah, the 9th best passing grade in the country at 88.8 right now. But we've seen Aguilar before at Appalachian State be a little bit of a roller coaster. It's a big test this week for the Tennessee Volunteers against Georgia.
I think that's a spectacular call on Georgia's use of man coverage against Tennessee, because so much of what Tennessee is about offensively in their passing game is speed, is getting vertical, the switch releases deep down the field that mess with zone coverage and communication on the back end of it. When you just get in cover 1 and you feel like you have the better athletes, you know what you do? You take all the communication out of it. There's sometimes Kirby Smart's got 2 things that always work to his advantage in the secondary. He's got the best athletes in the country, and he's the best defensive coach in the country because he gets those guys to communicate and understand how to not give up explosives. There's different times to use each of those things. In this case, you have the better players. You've got all your 5-star corners out there and everything that you love in the high school recruiting ranks. It's a matter of just, run by us then. Go ahead and run by us, because I don't believe you can do it. We don't need to sit back and communicate and try to figure out who's got 1, who's got 2, who's got the switch, what are we doing here? It's a matter of, we're going to be better than you. And Georgia's defense has consistently been better than Tennessee's receivers because there's not much route diversity in it. They're trying to get vertical, and if Georgia feels like they have the better athletes, they'll do it again. They've got Dalen Everett. They've got Ellis Robinson.
Yeah.
They've got, and even then, the single high guy back there. You got KJ Bolden back there. You feel pretty good about that, right? Yeah. So I think Kirby's going to take a similar approach. It's a great call out with that, because it does, if you can do it. And not many college teams can do it, because not many college teams are stacked with the corners that Georgia has. Then it really is going to work against this team, because they just can't separate deep down the field. And what's the quarterback left to do? Either 1, sit in the pocket and wait. You don't want that either. Or 2, throw it into a tight window. That's the part where it gets interesting for Aguilar.
Again, when I was looking at the coverage numbers for Georgia against Tennessee compared to other games, just that really jumped out, was that the fact that they played 15% basically, cover 1, or 16% I should say, in every other game, but against Tennessee that basically doubled to 30%. So yeah, Georgia gets very aggressive with Tennessee's offense. It really has worked out beautifully for the Georgia defense through 4 games against Josh Heupel so far. All right, Dalton, will Tennessee pull it off at home, or will number 6 Georgia start really the first big victory of the season?
I was really back and forth on this game too. This is a hard one, because I do think there's a world where at home, especially Tennessee's defense can win them this game. But I think if it's low scoring, I think Georgia, it feels like does this game feel like a matter of trust, right? Am I going to trust Joey Aguilar and all the numbers you just mentioned about these matchups, or am I just going to trust Kirby Smart, right? And I know we don't have head coach grades around here, but I'm sure Kirby Smart's at a pretty elite level if we did make him. I'm going to go with the defensive strategy. I'm going to go with his ability to guide his team through a game like this. Low scoring, defensive, absolute slugfest for 12 rounds. Georgia 19, Tennessee 16.
I like it. I have Georgia winning 24-20. So Heupel finally puts up 20 points against Georgia, but it's still not enough, because I think Georgia's offense will squeak by in a really massive road victory too. I also have Georgia winning this ball game 24-20. We have to get the opinion though, Dalton, of course, from our resident Tennessee fan, our producer back there, and Eli. Eli, how do you feel going into this major top 15 matchup?
I'm feeling pretty good. I won't spoil it, but stay tuned for Upset of the Week.
Oh.
Oh, and he gets different rules than we do.
Yeah, we had to pick outside the games. He could pick within
I can
the
pick
games.
Whatever I want.
He could.
He does man the booth back there running the 1s and 2s, so I think he gets all the.
Oh no, for sure. Sure. I mean, unless he's messing with us, unless there's something unless he's got a sneaky play that he's just trying to distract us from. It could be that too.
So we both take Georgia, but apparently producer Eli might be taking the Vols. We'll see that in our upset pick coming on later on in the show. Next up is another 3:30 game on ESPN. That is Pittsburgh at West Virginia. And Dalton is the final backyard brawl, unfortunately, for a few years because Pittsburgh and West Virginia, they will meet on Saturday for the 108th time in what's known as the backyard brawl, one of the fiercest rivalries that we have in college football. These two schools played each other every year from 1944 to 2011 before Pitt left the Big East for the ACC and West Virginia left the Big East for the Big 12. After an 11-year hiatus from 2011 through really 2021 season, these two programs have met in each of the last 3 years as a part of their respective non-conference schedules. But unfortunately, this year's game will be the final time that Pitt and West Virginia square off until the 2029 season. It's going to be another 4 years before we get another backyard brawl, unfortunately. But this is always one of the fiercest rivalries. These fan bases hate each other. I can't wait to watch this game.
Oh boy, you just go back through all the memories, especially when they were both in the Big East and fighting to contend for a Big East title back in the day. But no, it's always it's just one of the best names for a rivalry.
Oh
first.
yeah,
just like it just fits so well, doesn't it? Like backyard brawl. Like it feels like that's what it is every single time, and even better. Rich Rodriguez being back for it.
Oh, yeah.
That just rules, man. Rich Rodriguez against Pat Narduzzi. What a coaching matchup there. And the last time for a while maybe, but, it'll be back soon. This is, and I think for both of these teams trying to find their footing it's not a conference game, but I think trying to figure out kind of the measuring stick of how good they are and what they need to fix heading into conference play.
And these games seem to always end in weird ways, too. It's always a close game at the very end, and then a wild play seems to swing the momentum of that ball game. So I can't wait to watch the backyard brawl. Unfortunately, again, the last one we'll have until 2029, but we're going to enjoy this one on Saturday. Dalton, you have the West Virginia offense, which unfortunately received devastating news yesterday. Star running back Jaheim White, who I had as a top 10 running back in America entering the year in an offense under Rich Rodriguez that we know runs the ball at one of the highest rates in the country. I said it before, he could have been a Doak Walker sleeper this year. Unfortunately, we have the news now, though. He is out for the rest of the season now. So where does West Virginia's offense go from here?
Well, it's tough. I actually am not entirely. I don't think philosophically it's going to change because let's talk about what West Virginia wants to do. And look, Rich Rodriguez he's a coach who's always wanted to run the football, especially ratcheted that up with the last couple of years at Jacksonville State. You look at the numbers this year, West Virginia 27th in run rate, and that's actually only a little bit lower right now because they were behind against Ohio in the second half last week, and they lost that game. They had to throw a lot in the second half. Number one team in the country when it comes to the percentage of read options they run. It's a constant option football in the backfield. 19th in yards per carry, 16th in yards after contact per carry, which again is a big thing for an option team playing in open space so often. 10th in explosive run rate. If you're going to beat West Virginia, you have to stop the run. So philosophically, nothing is going to change. The problem is you just lost your best player for the season with this knee injury. Jaheim White really was the engine of it. They didn't score a point after he got hurt last week. I mean, he had the only touchdown. I mean, it's just this is a problem. This is a real problem because they're going to try to. And look, Nico Marchiol is not the most dynamic quarterback. He's going to run the system. He's a veteran. He's been there. He's the incumbent. He was there last year. But this is tough. Now it went from, to me, a scheme bit that we were going to talk about to who's going to step up for this team at running backs. Is it Sincere Bowers? Is it Clay Ash? Is it obviously Marchiol's going to be running as well at quarterback? But losing Jaheim White is beyond devastating to this offense. I mean, he's forced 10 missed tackles this year. The rest of the team put together has forced 8 on the ground. I mean, he's, like you mentioned, one of the best backs in college football. It's a shame we don't get to see him in this game, because he was the engine of it. He was the heart and soul of this offense. This offense was designed for Jaheim White. It really was. And now with him out for the season, it's tough to project who's going to step up in their run game at the level that White would have.
And also, I should mention this too. Jaden Bray, one of their top receivers, he's also out for the season too.
I mean,
when it rains, it pours right now for West Virginia.
They're just wearing it, man. I mean, they still have Cam Vaughn on the outside, and Mark Yule's obviously a guy who's played some good football, but that's tough for a team like this, and also a team like this that they're not stacked with receiving options. They don't throw the ball very much. They don't want to throw the ball very much. They want to run the ball, but also now their superstar running back is out. So it's tough. West Virginia, they're going to be grinding in this game. I think that's going to be the big thing, and they were going to be grinding anyway because Pat Narduzzi's defense is really good. But I'll tell you what, this is a tough task now without White, and I know they're at home, and I know it's still going to be a lot of energy. But West Virginia is going to have to find a way to run the football. It just got a lot harder with these injuries.
Yeah, again, one of the top 10 running backs in the country, and Jaheim White out for the season for West Virginia, and also their number 2 receiver on the team, Jaden Bray, he's also out for the season for West Virginia too. So a lot of injuries, unfortunately, for that Mountaineers offense right now. My match to watch for Pittsburgh's offense is really, can Eli Holstein make the throws to win this game? So far, through 2 games, it's looked pretty good for Eli Holstein in terms of box score numbers. He has a 519 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, but the under the hood numbers in the analytics aren't as kind to him. Only a 66.6 passing grade, which is 80th in the country, 2 big-time throws, and 3 turnover-worthy plays. Again, it was against Duquesne and Central Michigan so far this season. Their star offensive player on Pitt is also the running back in Desmond Reed, but he may have a tough time in this game as a runner. Last year against West Virginia, he only ran for 26 yards, averaging 2.4 yards per carry, easily Desmond Reed's worst performance of the entire season. And the Mountaineers' run D looks pretty strong once again this year. They're inside the top 10 of both run defense grade and yards before contact per attempt allowed. So 91.7 run defense grade, and they only allow 0.1 yards before contact per attempt. The Mountaineers, though, so far through 2 weeks, are only 87th in coverage grade. Last year, they had the 5th worst coverage grade in all of college football. There likely will be opportunities for Eli Holstein to make some big-time throws in this game. He's got to hit them, though, right now. Because like I said before, I don't think this is a game where Desmond Reed can carry this offense to a win. Eli Holstein has to play a lot better than he's looked through 2 games so far.
I would argue that the West Virginia game last year was his best game of the year, and he really shredded him through the air, and that was the reason they won this game. You make a good point about wanting to balance it out with Desmond Reed, but I think with Holstein, that's what you talk about is ball security, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant with him. Last year, the highest turnover-worthy play rate in the SEC, 5.3%. You're an ACC. Yeah, I think it might have been the highest in the SEC also. But
he was in the SEC before, right? He transferred. Yeah.
All the Alabama transfers are everywhere. You got him. You got Lonergan. You've got somebody else I can't think of right this is. Alabama transfer. Oh, it's Julian Sand. That's the one.
There you go. Yeah.
Just Alabama transfers all over the place. But no, I mean ball security. That's the one thing that can take you out of a ball game, that even if you think you should win, you just can't turn the ball over, right? So sometimes he's been a little lucky with them. If he's secure with the football in this game, feel good about Pitt's chances.
Didn't he lead the country last year in dropped interceptions, I believe?
Yeah, it was like 9 or 10.
So again, like the box score numbers for Holstein look better than the actual PFF numbers. That's why we exist here to show, okay, like even though, again, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, over 500 yards through 2 games, most people would say, oh, he's playing great ball through 2 games. But also you see under the hood numbers, 2 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays, only a 74% adjusted completion rate. It hasn't been as pretty for Eli Holstein as the box score suggests.
No, absolutely, and that was a theme last year for sure. If he protects the football, they can be a very solid offense. That's just a matter. And eventually, you get worried. Those defensive guys, they start catching them. Don't let defensive players start catching the football. I know I used to have Coach Fab tell me they just couldn't do it. They defensive players they can't catch. That's why they're out there. But you just don't want to take that chance all the time. So being secure with the football in a lot of these games we're talking about today is big, but especially in this one.
And again, against a top 10 run defense as of right now in college football, but also a secondary that is very, very vulnerable. So there will be opportunities for Eli Holstein to win this ball game for Pitt. He's got to do it, though. So, Dalton, unfortunately, in the final backyard brawl for 4 years, who will win between Pitt and West Virginia?
There is a unit in Pittsburgh's defense that we talked about in the summer that I think is at a huge advantage in this game, especially with Jaheim White out. This is one of the best groups of linebackers in the country. Kyle Lewis Rasheem Biles, Braylon Lovelace, they're all off to a really good start to their season, especially, again, when you're talking about option football and trying to manipulate linebackers. These are some of the best in the country. They're also some of the fastest in the country, especially Kyle Lewis. I think that's a unit that leads them to a really good defensive day. I've got the Panthers 23-13.
I have 28-20. I also have Pitt winning this ball game too. They'll win their second straight backyard brawl thanks to their strong defense, and I think Eli Holstein will have a pretty good day. You mentioned last year he had a really good game against West Virginia. I think he has another really good game against West Virginia in this one. So again, I have 28-20, Pitt winning the final backyard brawl until the 2029 season. Next up at 4:30 is one of the biggest games of the week, and we did not think it would be going into the season.
Biggest game in USF history?
It's up there. I mean, I know they had some great years back in the day, but man, this is a big one. Number 18, USF at number 5, Miami. 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the CW network. The storyline to know is, can USF topple its third giant in as many weeks? They're the biggest Cinderella story that we have in college football right now. They started their year off by dominating number 25 Boise State 34-7, a school that made the college football playoff quarterfinals last year and was the clear favorite to represent the group of 5 in the playoff once again this year. Boise State was both of our picks to make the playoff right now. USF dominated them, wiped the floor with them in week 1. So that game, we came out of it and said, okay, USF is at least a contender to be the group of 5 playoff team this year. Week 2 showed, no, they're the outright favorite to be the group of 5 playoff team this year because they went on the road and beat number 13 Florida 18-16 despite entering that game on the road as 17.5-point underdogs. Now USF is ranked for the first time in 7 years, and they can skyrocket up even higher than number 18 if they could beat a top 5 team in Miami on the road. USF right now, the only team in America with 2 ranked wins already on their schedule. They're looking for a third one in as many games this week against Miami.
And you know my theory on this. I've been saying it since Sunday. If it was me and they had found a way to win this game, I'd make them number 1 in the country.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that.
Resume-wise, I would do it.
It's clear. Yeah.
I mean, you beat Florida at Florida, Miami at Miami. You dominate Boise, who made the playoff last year in week 1, who, you know what, still might be a pretty good team. We'll see how they bounce back in Mountain West play, but maybe Boise, and the better that Boise is, the better it is for USF and their resume because they're going to win that tiebreaker, right? Yep. So I think as far as USF, it's an incredible story the first couple weeks of the season. Alex Golesh has them playing such hard-nosed football, especially on defense. Todd Orlando's defense looks better than it has at any point in the last couple of years, and that's something that's going to be a premium in this game, having to keep it. Just keep yourselves in it. Give yourself a chance. You get to that last 5 to 8 minutes, and you just have a chance. It's a one-score game like it was in Gainesville. You never know. It only takes one mistake, one big penalty, is swinging momentum like that. You never know. So I think that's going to be the theme again here with USF is they're going to try to play really good defense and keep themselves in it for as long as possible.
But it's a tough test this week. The toughest test of the year so far for USF against a top 5 team in Miami. Dalton, you have that Miami offense with Carson Beck there, and that Miami offensive line was kicking ass in that week 1 game against Notre Dame. So really, how will USF do trying to get some pressure on Carson Beck?
So here's what happened last week with USF. I think they did, for their standard, against a really explosive Gator team, they did a great job in coverage, preventing the deep ball, right? DJ Lagway, I think, did not complete a deep ball in that game, correct?
No, he didn't.
That's a big thing. Now, a little bit different style here with Carson Beck. 2, they did stop the run pretty well. Jaden Baugh had his moments, but they only gave up 4.5 yards a carry across 30 carries. That's a good result for the Bulls also. I think in run defense, they could do a nice job in this game. Miami does not. They've got a good offensive line, but it's not the most creative run game. I think they can get physical with it. To me, the question is, can they get any more pressure against another elite offensive line on Carson Beck than they did on DJ Lagway? They only pressured Lagway was only pressured on 3 dropbacks last week.
It was the highest Florida pass blocking grade we've ever seen in a game.
And none of those 3 pressures were defensive linemen. They were all blitzers, either from linebackers or from slot players. So their USF's defensive linemen did not have a single pressure in that game against Florida, which actually makes it even more amazing that they won, because I'd have to look back at how many games we've seen other than maybe academy schools where a quarterback was not pressured for an entire game. Or at least, or I should say, a defensive line did not get a single pressure for an entire game. So DJ Lagway was sitting back there clean. He either just didn't make the throws sometimes, or there was a couple of big drops in that game, or Florida's committing penalties, right? So Miami can't beat yourself. But then you look at Carson Beck. And Carson Beck's different than DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway's a home run hitter. Carson Beck's a singles hitter. He can manufacture, especially in a clean pocket. Max, since he became a starter in 2023 for Georgia, I'm going to give you the list of quarterbacks with a higher passing grade in a clean pocket than Carson Beck. Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Caleb Williams, Cam Ward, Jaden Daniels. Carson Beck is 6 behind those 5 guys. 4 first-round picks, 3 top 2 picks, and Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about when Beck's back there clean, he's an NFL-level processor. He's got the quick release. He's going to get rid of the football. On top of the fact that, and that's another thing too, we saw it against Notre Dame. He gets rid of the football generally before you can pressure him anyway. And now if he's got time to operate, get to his second and third, real problem. USF is going to, at some point in this game, if Beck is not fully in a rhythm of just tearing him apart underneath anyway, they're going to have to find a way to get some pressure on him. Because we know Beck at times, we've seen it in the past, you do get him under pressure at a decent rate. He's not that mobile. There's times, and he was really good under pressure the handful of times against Notre Dame, but there's times where it's not much on the improv, right? But they got to find a way to do it. Because they didn't pressure Lagway at all, and they got away with it. Have to find a little, if you have to manufacture it if you're Todd Orlando, or if your defensive line just has to play better, you've got to find a way to get some level of pressure on Carson Beck. Because if you only pressure Beck 3 times the whole game, well, he's going to go off on you.
Yeah. So it's all about the trenches for Miami's offense. And it's all about the trenches for USF's offense, too. My match to watch is USF's offensive line against Miami's defensive line. Because you mentioned before, Miami's offensive line was great against Notre Dame. Miami's defensive line was elite against the Fighting Irish. They were the biggest reason why they beat Notre Dame in that Week 1 game. Miami had a 63.9% pass rush win rate against what was thought as a top 10 at least offensive line in the country.
Oh boy.
Many analysts thought they were the number 1 offensive line in the country. And star running back Jeremiah Love only had 46 rushing yards on 11 attempts, and everyone thought he was the number 1 running back in the country entering the year. He still might be, but Miami's defensive line was that freaking dominant in that Week 1 game. Through 2 weeks, Miami has the 3rd highest graded defensive line in college football. They are 2nd as a team in run defense grade. They are 7th as a team in pass rush grade. Top 10 pick, Ruben Bain Jr. see him right there. He could be a top 10 pick, I should say, projected right now. He's been the star of that unit so far. He's the only edge rusher in America with 90-plus grades, both as a run defender and as a pass rusher. He was unfreaking blockable in that game against Notre Dame. Like I said, he could be a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick in the 2026 NFL draft if he keeps playing like that. I will say, though, USF's offensive line has performed very admirably in pass protection, posting a top 40 pass blocking grade in the country through 2 weeks. That includes a 77.7 pass blocking grade against Florida this past weekend, who had my number 4 defensive line in the country entering the year. I thought it was going to be a big mismatch for USF in that game, and Byron Brown held on the football for, I believe, an average of 2.8 seconds. It wasn't like he was getting rid of the football quickly, and USF's offensive line still held up against Florida. I will say, though, again, the run game has been a different story for USF. Right now, USF has the 10th worst run blocking grade in all of college football so far. So their ability to keep Byron Brown, their superstar quarterback, upright in this game and get any sort of push for Byron Brown and the running backs in the run game against what looks like at least a top 3, maybe even the best defensive line in college football, could be the biggest difference in whether or not USF pulls off a 3rd straight upset or falls to 2-1 in the season.
2 things in this offense for Alex Golesh, which is the exact same as Josh Heupel at Tennessee, that they're going to want to do, especially when you have a defensive line like that. In Miami, because they have that great defensive line, they don't blitz a whole lot. So you're going to be dealing with those 4 guys, especially Bain and Mesidor off the edge. 2 things they're going to want to do. 1, first down, okay? USF is all about tempo. They have to get a positive play on first down so they can get in the tempo, they can get out there and make those D linemen sweat, get the hands on the hips going, get them, just exhaust them, right? You wear them down over the course of the game, right? I think that's something against Notre Dame that Notre Dame didn't get a rhythm of until late in the game when they were behind, was pick the tempo up. let's go. If they're going to leave those 4 guys out there, and those are the guys, Ruben Bain and them, that's what they're going to rely on to win this game, you got to wear them down. So tempo is big, and I think for Miami, just getting off to a good start on drives and in the game overall in the first quarter, get yourself off to a good first quarter, 3 and out right away is big. If USF can't pick up the tempo, ideally, Alex Golesh wants to lead the nation in offensive plays per game. It's slowed down a little on them these first 2 because they haven't gotten in the full rhythm. Maybe they'll get more of that in the American. But if they get it in this game, it's a problem. The other thing you mentioned about the pass rush, they have pass blocked well. The other thing that's the second layer in this is tackling Byron Brown.
Yeah.
Right? He's one of those quarterbacks. He's one of the hardest guys in college football to tackle. Right? Even if you are Ruben Bain or Akeem Mesidor or Caleb Banks or Tyreek.
Group of 5 Lenore Sellers.
Essentially, yeah, that's pretty much what you're talking about. Is you can pressure him all you want, but this is a player that you have to. It's almost like Josh Allen with the Bills, where it's like you can pressure him all you want. If you don't bring him down, he's going to kill you, especially with his legs. So I think that's a big factor. Is yes, getting pressure, but also finishing the play is massive when you're talking about Byron Brown and his rushing ability.
So, Dalton, last week, USF was a 17.5-point underdog, and they pulled off the outright upset victory over Florida. This week, they're a 17.5-point underdog. Will they pull off a 3rd upset in a row, or will a top 5 team in Miami and, for now, the Cinderella run that USF's on?
I think if they were going to pull off this one, they do need to get off to a better offensive start. The first half of these first two games they've played, including the Boise State one, they haven't played great offense. They went into halftime up on Boise 10-7. In Florida, they were down 9-6, and their defense kept them in reach. They have to get off to a better offensive start if they're going to do that. I've got Miami. I think USF, look, they used a boatload of energy to win that game last week, right? It took every last ounce of grit that they had. I think Miami is a different type of challenge because I think Carson Beck is a different type of challenge than Lagway. There is a world against DJ Lagway where you go, hey, if we just don't let him hit home runs, he's going to make some unforced errors. And he kind of did, right? Carson Beck is the other way around, where you almost want to challenge him. You almost wonder if Todd Orlando goes with a little more man-to-man coverage just to do it. And look, it's dangerous because we saw even against Notre Dame, Malachi Toney and C.J. Daniels and those guys, they can win those battles. But I'm taking Miami 30-14. USF pulling off 3 in a row, I think would just be the most ridiculous thing we see all year. I do think actually that the Carson Beck is the difference in this game, and he just keeps it cool and keeps the offense moving. And Beck always understands the assignment here. He knows how big this game is for USF, but also understanding what they are on defense, manufacture. You can't. The first 2 teams, Boise was incapable. They just couldn't throw vertically, so they weren't a threat. Florida tried the deep shots, wasn't happening, couldn't find another answer. I think Beck has the answers. Miami 30-14.
I have it 31-21. I also have Miami winning this game. I think Miami's trenches are the difference in this one. I think the offensive line against US's pass rush will win that matchup, and I think Ruben Bain and company in the defensive line will win against USF's offensive line too. Even with the loss, USF is still the favorite to be the Group of 5 playoff team. I
think losing this game, especially if they were to say even, let's say, cover the 17 or whatever it is, or play, like if they lost a tight game, especially, but I don't think losing this game has really any bearing on say their playoff chances.
No.
Now at this point they just need to get into the American, and they've got tough games. There's an at Memphis, there's an at Navy. Maybe we'll preview them. Maybe they'll be big enough games that we can preview them. But it's going to be USF's a big story now, regardless of whether they win or lose this game. And if they ever pulled it off, I don't even know where it would go from there. I have no idea.
And kind of say right now, even if they lose and if Miami even covers this spread too, I know they won't be in the AP poll considering they're number 18 right now. They should absolutely still be ranked even if they lose to Miami by however many points. This is still a team that should be ranked. After beating Boise State, after beating Florida, I have USF number 11 in my personal ranking. I will guarantee you they will not drop out of my top 25 even if they lose to Miami by 20 to 30 points. I don't care. They should still be ranked for what they did in the first 2 weeks.
They've earned it.
Yeah.
They've absolutely earned it, and they've earned it going into play in the American, and they've got a runway before some of their tougher games. I think this could be win or lose this game, and it's a tough one, obviously. It's another tough one going the other way down I-75 this time. They have a potentially special season in front of them, considering what they've already done. They have to stay healthy. Byron Brown has to be healthy this time. And then wait till they find their offensive rhythm against some of those teams. Then they get scary because I think this defense is for real.
So again, I doubt the AP. If they do lose, I doubt the AP poll will have them in the top 25. That's why the PFF top 25 is the one you should be looking at right now, because they should be ranked after, even if they lose to Miami. But we'll see.
Very humble plug right there.
If they pull it off, though, I may have to.
If they pull it off, you make them number one. That's the one demand I will make. If they actually pulled this off, you make them number one. I will not come on the show Sunday unless they're number one. You will do the show by yourself on Sunday if they win and they're not the top ranked.
We'll have your brother, a USF grad, call into the show too, just screaming at me for not being number one. They might be number one.
I think if they win this game, I'm telling you, I've said it since Sunday, I'd make them number one.
Oh, if LSU wins against Florida, then they'll also beat Florida like USF did.
So
and
they'll do LSU 1 and USF 2?
That might be what I do. I know you hate me for it, but it'd be tough. I'll guarantee you top 3.
Got the Boise win, though.
I'll guarantee you top 3.
Fine.
We'll see what happens. Well, wait.
I hate your style of negotiating. It's just the worst. It's just.
Oh, well, that would be one of the biggest upsets of the week if USF can pull it off again after being 17.5-point underdogs. But now we're going to go over our upsets of the week here on the PFF College Football Show. This PFF betting segment is brought to you by DraftKings. So a reminder, Eli and I both won our picks last week.
Yeah, there it is.
Eli edged me out a little bit in the standings. His was a plus 130 underdog. Mine was a plus 124. Dawn, how much was yours last week?
220. 220. Well, what it would have been, you're saying, but
so you got 0 then?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
UConn's defense, Steve Angeli.
You bet against Syracuse, my alma mater.
Yeah.
All right.
I still,
Notable.
it was still good.
Noted.
It was good process.
Sure.
Did you eat your oranges from Tennessee Syracuse
yet?
Did.
Yeah. I got to do that.
Okay.
I do owe
Eat your oranges before you start talking. Jeez, get some fruit in you.
All right, let's start off with producer Eli, who is the reigning champion and also the current leader in the standings right now with 130 points so far. Eli, you teased it before. Are you going with your Vols right now, or are you going outside of them?
I am. I'm going to take the Vols at currently plus 142. I like the matchup. It's too juicy for me not to. What you said is all true. I think Kirby Smart is going to throw everything he can at Joey Aguilar, but I think the offense has looked really good so far. And I think home game for Tennessee, give me the home dog.
I'm curious on Aguilar. It was a stat I meant to bring up earlier. The last 2 years, I've mentioned this before, the last 2 years, Aguilar had 11 more turnover-worthy plays than any quarterback in the country. So far, through 2 games, no turnover-worthy plays. That's big. Ball security. We mentioned it with Holstein in the Pitt game. Aguilar, ball security. He comes out and gets back to the gunslinging App State days and throws 3 interceptions. We have a major problem. If he's secure with the football and Tennessee runs it with those 3 backs like we've seen so far, then you're talking about maybe winning a hard-fought game. I get it, Eli. I think I had a hard time. I almost did pick Tennessee because I think that's a tough environment. It's a tough environment for Stockton to walk into in his first road game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that was a good one. I'll let you go next, Dalton, with your upset pick.
Sure. I was digging through, and who got a big win last week? I've got a Conference USA Sunbelt matchup. Jacksonville State got a big win against Liberty, who we both picked to win Conference USA, and apparently that's everything about college football is upside down right now because Liberty's already lost to Jacksonville State, and they're behind in the standings. But Jacksonville State, we've talked about Rich Rodriguez leaving. Now Charles Kelly goes in there. Clint Trickett, the offensive coordinator. They still run the football a whole lot, too, like they did last year, okay? With Cam Cook, especially running back, former Rutgers and Kentucky quarterback Gavin Wimsatt is a big factor in this run game. They're not great at throwing the football, but they still run it at a top 10 rate. And as far as performance, they're still something like a top 30 to 40 rushing team. They're going down to play Georgia Southern. I believe they're a 5.5, 6-point underdog. Georgia Southern right now, through 2 games, by just about every metric that we have, is the worst run defense in college football. I think they've given up at almost or at over 700 rushing yards in the first 2 games. I'm taking Jacksonville State. Cam Cook in for a big day. Gavin Wimsatt going to help that on the ground as well. Charles Kelly keeps it rolling at Jacksonville State. We thought there was going to be a big fall off for them with Rich Rodriguez leaving and a lot of transfer pieces leaving. We might have been wrong on that one. I'm taking Jacksonville State plus 150 over Georgia Southern.
I'm going to take it down to Florida for my upset pick of the week. And Dalton, last week you tried to pick against my alma mater.
Good process.
And it didn't work out for you. I'm going to pick for your alma mater, kind of extend the olive branch here.
Good process.
I'm going to take the FAU Owls, your FAU Owls. I take this away from you, over FIU this week. FAU over FIU. FAU, big week last week. They beat Florida A&M 56-14. Good win for them. FIU coming off a 34-0 loss to Penn State, too.
Played pretty well in that game, though.
They did play really well in that game. But the big reason why I want to take this is if I hit this, then I'm right, and you can't be bragging to me about FAU. It's like, yeah, I knew this would happen anyways. But if they lose, then I get to jinx your alma mater and make them lose this ball game too. So after you tried to be a jerk last week and pick against Syracuse, I'm going to try to be a jerk this week and pick your alma mater and FAU. That way I could be right on both counts. I could be happy that your alma mater lost after you were such a jerk last week, or I could be happy that I got my upset pick of the week right.
There you go.
I'm playing both sides here.
You're playing both sides, so you always win. Okay,
that's why I picked FAU.
That's the always sunny method. I get it. All right, that makes sense. The one thing I'll tell you, though, be careful with FAU, Caden Veldkamp in the quarterback situation, a lot of 6 interceptions week 1 against Maryland, not a great passing grade. The one thing about FIU, really good secondary. Top 10 coverage grade, I believe, in the country last year. Top 25 this year. Now, I thought their defense actually played pretty well against Drew Aller and Penn State. I know you might have been a little annoyed with that one, but that's the one thing I'm looking at. If FAU, same thing. Ball security, if they don't turn the football over, yeah, they can go there. They can go there and with big rivalry down there, the Shula Bowl. Okay, yeah. Don't sleep on the Shula Bowl. Okay. Just telling you right now. You know what? No, that's okay. You picked either the Owls win or all of us. I've been in on the parlay too. Listen, I was just as mad about the cash last week as you were. All right? Syracuse just, you guys had to go and ruin it.
I mean, they covered, so.
That was tough.
So not only did you get the upset wrong, you got the spread wrong too, honestly.
Yeah, it feels bad. Those half points will kill you, man.
Yeah.
The hook always gets you.
But after you tried to be a jerk last week, I'm going to be a jerk this week. And I'm going to play both sides here and either get my upset pick of the week right or your alma mater loses. And I'll be happy either way.
Wow. You're a petty person. You're an extremely petty person is what you are.
Yep, I am.
Eat your darn oranges.
I will eat the oranges.
We got to work on that this week.
I will eat the oranges this week or
don't want
pretty soon.
Don't want you getting scurvy or nothing, jeez.
All right, well, the rivalries are real, the bands are loud, and the upsets, they're already shaking up the rankings. College football is rolling right now, and there's still time to turn your picks into big payouts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Think you know the game? Prove it every Saturday. From live betting during the game to rivalry week odds and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to stay in the action from kickoff until the final whistle. Whether you're betting on your go-to team or making moves mid-game as the momentum shifts, Saturdays are yours to win with DraftKings Sportsbook. Here's something special for first-timers. New customers, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. That's code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies with jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right. Bunch of night games to get to right here in our Week 3 preview. We got 5 night games to talk about in our preview. First one we're talking about.
We got enough TVs? Jeez.
Yeah, we're going to figure that out this weekend, honestly.
Man, oh, man.
Because there's a lot in this nice slate. Arkansas at number 17, Ole Miss. 7 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. A pair of 2-0 SEC teams are squaring off this week. Ole Miss and Arkansas will meet for the 72nd time in their rivalry this Saturday and each are 2-0 to start the season. The Rebels beat Georgia State in Week 1 before taking down Kentucky this past weekend in their SEC opener. The Razorbacks, meanwhile, open conference play this Saturday after beating Alabama A&M and Arkansas State in their first 2 games. And these 2 schools, Dalton, have split the last 10 games of this rivalry, with Ole Miss winning the last 2 games. If Arkansas can get revenge this year, it might enter the top 25 for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah, this is an odd matchup because you have an Arkansas team with a team with a veteran quarterback in Talon Green who has been really good in the first 2 games, but they've played softer competition, right? Ole Miss had one easy game and then a tough game at Kentucky last week that, like we mentioned, I thought Lane Kiffin really guided a very young team through some adversity last week. They got off to a bad start. They were down 10-0 early, and he got them through it. We know the Rebels lost a ton of NFL talent this year in the draft. They kind of missed a playoff opportunity last year, but if they can continue to build this around Austin Simmons and this good receiving core that they have, maybe they can start to build some momentum as they get into SEC play. They're 1-0 in the SEC. Tough game at Kentucky. See if they can keep the momentum going at home.
You have the Ole Miss offense in this one right now, which in week 1 had a little bit of issues, and they had scored 30 points last week. It's a pretty good Kentucky defense. What should we know about Austin Simmons and the Rebels right now?
Yeah, this is a weird matchup because when these two played last year, Arkansas, they had a lot of injuries in the secondary. They were struggling in coverage. They were 119th in the country in coverage grade last year. And Jackson Dart just went in there and tore him to shreds. And Trey Harris and Jordan, that was a game Jordan Watkins had like 250 yards or something. Ole Miss just walked in there and teed off on them. I believe the score was so bad that Arkansas, I believe, just benched Talon Green at halftime because it wasn't worth playing the second half. So weird dynamic because now this is not Jackson Dart. This is Austin Simmons. And Austin Simmons is really young. This is going to be his 3rd career start. He only played a handful of snaps last year, as we know. And it's been up and down. It's been really up and down. And Lane Kiffin's tried to, he's kind of right now kind of holding his hand through this offense. There's some good. The yards per attempt is over 10 yards. That's really good. He gets the idea that this offense is meant to sling it vertically down the field and stress out defenses vertically. But there's also been moments where the ball security hasn't been great. And they're running play action on 2/3 of their pass plays. So there's a lot that Lane Kiffin's trying to guide him through. But Austin Simmons so far, 55.5 passing grade. 67.9% adjusted completion rate. Average time to throw is hovering just above 2.1 seconds because this offense is very quick release and just wants to get the first read out there, but 5 turnover-worthy plays in 2 games. What concerns you about Austin Simmons, and this includes early in the game last week with 2 first-quarter interceptions, the mistakes feel like they're really, really big mistakes, right? You can miss throws. Every quarterback misses some percentage of throws, even if they're not the most accurate guy, but you can't just throw it right in people's chests. You can't just make decisions throwing into double coverage, especially when you're down in the red zone and those windows get tight. So this, to me, is about Austin Simmons improving on a week-to-week basis. And then, look, all the players that started for Arkansas secondary in this game last year, none of them are starting for Arkansas this year. They're either gone or backups or whatever. So it's a completely revamped secondary against a totally new offense that lost all those guys at Ole Miss went to the NFL. Hard to know what to expect in this passing game. The one thing I will say is Austin Simmons has got to protect the football.
Yeah.
The big mistakes are what make the numbers look bad for them. And last week, what had him falling behind Kentucky and having to claw. Now, he did play much better after getting the early mistakes out of the way. He was better and he was a little involved in the run game. But early turnovers against a team that I think Arkansas is a little bit better, especially offensively, than Kentucky. You can't have the early turnovers. You can't make the big mistakes that could turn the game upside down.
And my watching this on the ball is Arkansas and their offense, led by their star quarterback in Talon Green, really can Ole Miss's defense contain Talon Green in this game. Talon Green entered this year as my honorable mention quarterback in my top 10 quarterbacks in the country. It's really my number 11 quarterback in all of college football. He had a really strong first year at Arkansas. He had 22 big-time throws last year, tied for the 9th most in the Power 4. 453 rushing yards after contact were the 5th most in the Power 4. Now, it's only been 2 games so far against subpar competition, but Talon Green looks absolutely fantastic in those 2 games. 91.5 PFF grade, 4th in America. 88.6 rushing grade is nearly 7 points higher than any other quarterback in college football. He has 202 rushing yards, the most of any quarterback in the Power 4. 10 passing touchdowns, tied for the most in the country. Now, Ole Miss has yet to allow 25 rushing yards from any quarterback this year, and right now have a top 35 coverage grade in college football with an 81.1 mark. However, they have yet to play a quarterback as dynamic as Taylor Green right now. So this kind of new look Ole Miss defense, losing so much talent to the NFL draft from last year's defense, has a big test this week against an electric quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the work that Bobby Petrino, Arkansas's offensive coordinator, has done with Green the last 2 years, considering the player that he was at Boise State when he was there, it was a roller coaster. And every once in a while, it's still a roller coaster with Arkansas, but he's a dangerous vertical passer. He's 230-plus pounds. He's a dangerous runner. He ran for 150 yards last week on Arkansas State. They scored 56. They've scored 52 and 56 in their 2 games. This offense is fun. It's high flying, and to me, we have actually we have one of our fans in the PFF Discord channel. Join that when you get a shot. Who is a big Arkansas fan. He was like, "Oh, what do you think of their offense? What do you think of this year?" And what I noticed with them is, I think to me, what Bobby Petrino wants to do, run it east and west, run it to the edges, and get off tackle. I think this is a game where in the run game they could really challenge, especially Suntaran Perkins. This is a guy we talk about a lot at Ole Miss. He's a great pass rusher, but what is he, 210, 215? Teams that run right at him, that's a different story. Him and Prince Will Umanmielen off the edge, I think, are a big factor both as pass rushers and in the run game in this game. I think they want to run east and west, and they want to throw it north and south.
Yeah.
They kind of it's that balance of really splitting a defense and then getting them to creep up and out wider, and then chucking it down the seams and deep down, because Taylor Green's got an absolute hose. He can make any throw on the field. He's capable of it. I just think this is a situation here now with Talon, and as hot as he's playing and as hot as he can get. He can run hot and cold sometimes, but when he gets hot, I got to be honest with you. I think Ole Miss, it was a big factor of them winning that last week that they earned it, but it was a lot, too, that Kentucky really is not very capable of throwing the football. That's a different test this week with this offense, with Bobby Petrino, with Talon Green and everything he's capable. And we saw it last year, him going and beating Tennessee. There were games last year where you're like, man, this kid's a problem. He's a real problem, and a dual threat problem at that.
So in this rivalry between Arkansas and Ole Miss, they've split the last 10 meetings. Both of them won 5 games apiece. Who will win this year's game? Will Arkansas pull off the upset, or will a top 20 team in Ole Miss continue their undefeated season?
This is tough. This is tough because Arkansas, they played Alabama A&M, and they played Arkansas State, in-state rival. I get it, and they did beat them 56-14. Arkansas State's generally pretty good down there in the Sun Belt, but we haven't seen him play a team like this yet. The 2 questions I have for Arkansas in this game, one very specifically to this game, is this secondary actually better?
Yeah.
If it is, and you keep guys in front of you with that offense and Austin Simmons chucking the ball now instead of Jackson Dart, now you keep yourself in the game, because last year they gave up 63, and I haven't seen many teams win a game when they give up 63. The other thing, their offensive line, especially in the interior, hasn't been great so far. I think they're solid at tackle, especially on the left side with Corey Robinson. I think that's a really good matchup with Umanmielen and with Perkins out there on the edges when Talon Green is back there dropping back to throw the ball. But I don't love the way Ole Miss is operating right now. And I really do think there's a big part. They were down 10-0 to Kentucky, scratching and clawing. Then they had to come back in. It was very back and forth. And that was a team that was – Kentucky's really not very capable of throwing the football. This kid's very capable of throwing the football and very capable and dangerous outside the pocket. I'm going to take Arkansas to go out on the road 28-24.
I agree with you. I have Arkansas winning this game, too, in an upset. I have it 31-30. I think Talon Green, and yes, he's been great against subpar competition, but again – he showed a lot last year, too. It's not like this is just, 2 games against subpar competition where he's looked great. He's looked really good last year, too. So I trust that against this new-look Ole Miss defense. And like you mentioned, that Ole Miss offense has some issues right now, especially along the offensive line, I think especially for them. If Arkansas secondary, like you mentioned, is better than they were last year, and right now they're the 14th best coverage grade in the country. Last year, the 16th worst coverage grade in the country. If that is better, and if they can get pressure on Austin Simmons, who hasn't looked great under pressure this year, I think Arkansas could go into Ole Miss and pull off the road victory. So I have Arkansas, too, pulling off the upset 31-30. I think it's going to be a heck of a ball game on Saturday night, and I think Ole Miss will suffer their first loss of the season against Arkansas.
Until we see Simmons kind of mature a little bit on the field and not make some of those big mistakes, I think that's where you really look at this game. Again, the Arkansas secondary is the X factor because, I'll tell you what, Harrison Wallace is playing great football. Yeah. Deshaun Stribling, Caden Lee, Daquan Rice, a lot of weapons on this Ole Miss team.
And ironically, I think Luke Haas might be returning for this game. There's talk about it.
Of course. I mean,
the former Arkansas tight end, who's a top 10 tight end in the country.
We gotta have a good revenge game, of course.
The doctors are probably like, all right, listen, sit out the first couple games. We know you want to be back for the.
You want to play Arkansas?
Yeah.
All right, dude. Here's the rehab plan to play.
Hopefully he's back. Game. I don't know. Yeah. It's not guaranteed, but there's talk about him potentially being back.
It's the Arkansas secondary. If they keep him in it and they don't just give up bombs left and right like they did last week. That's the first step, and then I'm with you. I think Arkansas has a decided quarterback advantage right now from what I've seen from Simmons in the first 2 games.
Yeah. Right now they're hoping Luke Haas can return this week, which would be really fun, not only because he's a top 10 tight end in the country, but also because he transferred from Arkansas to Ole Miss this year, too. So hopefully we see Luke Haas make his debut for the Rebels this week. Another massive night game. Number 16, Texas A&M at number 8, Notre Dame, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, both on NBC and Peacock. The storyline to know is very simple. Notre Dame's back is against the wall right now because they started the season off with a 27-24 loss to what was at the time number 10 Miami in week 1. They had a bye week this past week, and so right now Notre Dame is 0-1 to start the season. The Fighting Irish play their second straight top 20 team this weekend in Texas A&M, but after this weekend, Notre Dame does not have another currently ranked team on the rest of their schedule. It's still possible, if not probable, that a 10-2 Notre Dame team will get into the college football playoff, although I will say the Fighting Irish will be playing with fire at that point because they won't have, as of right now, they won't have any marquee wins on that schedule, and we've heard the playoff committee talk about how they're looking at that even more, having big-time wins. As of right now, Notre Dame does not play another ranked team the rest of the season. They will not play, obviously, a conference title game either. So, yes, I still think it's likely that a 10-2 Notre Dame team will get into the playoff, but it's not guaranteed that a 10-2 Notre Dame team will get into the playoff.
The best way to put it is I think it would be out of their hands.
Yeah.
Now, you have to go 10-2. If you lose one more game beyond that, then it's over. Notre Dame at 9-3 on this schedule and already losing to Miami and possibly A&M. Not a chance a 9-3 Notre Dame team would have. 10-2. Maybe, depending on how other things shake out. The Boise State loss to USF kind of hurt them because that could have been a ranked game. USC is another task. They've got some ACC opponents. But
I think they play Arkansas too, right? So hopefully they're probably hoping Arkansas could beat Ole Miss this weekend.
That's a possibility too. But even then, you mess around with Taylor Green, he can go in there and win a big game, right? I think that's at Arkansas, I believe.
So,
yeah. So, I mean, maybe that's not if they go out there and beat Ole Miss, that doesn't look as easy because you still have to win the ball game. So, we could talk about, you get to beat ranked teams. You still have to beat them. You have to beat them on the field. So, no, I think big stakes for both of these teams. Notre Dame, like you mentioned, I'm not sure at 10-2 they'll make the playoff. I can't say not 10-2 with these 2 losses and not another huge win. A&M, I mean, you look at them, and I picked them to make the playoff. This is a game where they could announce themselves as serious at-large contenders, especially. They're going to have, obviously, the tough SEC schedule. There's a boatload of big games, but if you beat Notre Dame early in the year, no matter what their record is at the end of it at Notre Dame, that's a huge win. That's a game-changing win if A&M were to go up there to South Bend.
Again, if they do win 10 in a row after losing to Texas A&M, I still think it's likely they get it. And I think the committee will say, Notre Dame team has rattled off 10 straight wins and all that, but with their new criteria they came out with saying, hey, we're going to look at these big-time games and whether or not you win or lose them. If Notre Dame is 0-2 in those big-time games and that's it for the season, it's dicey. I'll say it's dicey. I still think they get in at 10-2, but obviously winning this game against Texas A&M would be massive for Notre Dame's rest of the season. All right, Dalton, you have the Notre Dame offense against the Texas A&M defense, and Notre Dame's offensive line, I think, really lost in that ball game against Miami. What should we know about that matchup against Texas A&M now?
Man, I mean, they have to be better up front. No, this is more so than about A&M and Cassius Howell and those guys that they're bringing to the table, and they're really good. Mike Elko's always got a good run defense. That's going to be a big factor in this game, and obviously Howell rushing the pass. You see, he got 3 sacks on 3 plays in a row last week.
Crazy.
Just against, was it UTSA? I mean, just that's silly. But no, I think that the spotlight is on Notre Dame in the trenches. I mean, last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, against Miami, 52.6 PFF grade for their offensive line as a unit, 60 run blocking grade, not good enough when you're trying to open holes for these great. But look at that last number. I mean, they didn't. I know it's Ruben Bain and it's Akeem Mesidor, but that I'm pretty sure. I have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure Notre Dame had, if not the lowest pass blocking grade we've given them in PFF history, is one of the 2 or 3 worst. I mean, just they have to be better up front. I mean, the straight up, they have to. Notre Dame, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of scheme. I don't think there's a whole lot of anything else to it. Their front 5 has to put their big boy pants on and go out there and play better in the trenches like Notre Dame has been known to do for so many years. And I think the only schematic thing I have on it is in this game and generally in Mike Denbrock's offense, in this game last year especially, spreading things out and lightening the box and giving those guys less helmets to have to block was big for them. They were a lot more efficient running through the lighter boxes and spread out formation. So I think it's something, there's different ways to help your offensive line. Do you want extra blockers? Do you want lead blockers? Or do you want less? And I think space is going to be big. I think Mike Denbrock, it sounds funny because you're kind of putting those 5 guys on an island, but 5-on-5 is easier to block than 7-on-7 or 8-on-8 sometimes. I think they're going to spread it out. I think Denbrock's going to try to run the ball between the tackles. If that doesn't happen, and then it just comes down to C.J. Carr again, and I actually think C.J. Carr played well against Miami considering those numbers you just saw right there. But they really need to run the football. They need to. And I'm looking at them especially, what do I say all the time? Good offensive lines block the first level. Great offensive lines, like we've been told Notre Dame is, will block the second level. There's a couple really good players on that second level, and Torian York and Scooby Williams, who are really good run defenders. Big factor in this game. Texas A&M missed a lot of tackles last year. They need the tackling to be better. There's a lot of different factors, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame's offensive line plays like that again, like they played against Miami, they're going to lose.
By the way, it is the lowest pass blocking grade we've ever seen from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
The only one else they've had 2 ever that have been below 45, and the only other one was the week 1 game against Michigan in 2018 was 29.6.
And I know, and big factor too, it changes things from Mike Elko and his philosophy in this game. C.J. Carr, look, he made some nice plays on the move, and there was a couple of quarterback draws they mixed in there. He's not Riley Leonard athletically.
Yeah.
And Riley Leonard in this game, he had over 60 yards rushing in this game last year and was a big factor in the run game. You're not going to get that. So you need to make it up even more so up front, and then with Jeremiah Love, and then with Jadarian Price. So there's a big premium right now on Notre Dame's offensive line needing to play significantly better than that.
Absolutely. All right. It's all about the trenches on the other side, too. A&M's offensive line against Notre Dame's defensive line right now. Because Dalton's mentioned before, the story of that loss to Miami was Notre Dame's offensive line struggling. However, the Fighting Irish's defensive line also really struggled against Miami's offensive line, too. Notre Dame only had an 18.8% pressure rate against the Hurricanes. That was their lowest pressure rate in a game in 3 years. Now, to be fair to the Fighting Irish, the Hurricanes entered the year with one of my top 10 offensive lines in America. But, unfortunately for Notre Dame, in that same ranking, I had Texas A&M as the number 3 offensive line in America heading into this year. They brought back all 6 players who played 300-plus snaps last year on the offensive line. They have some superstars on that offensive line, too, namely their guard, Armaj Reed-Adams, who I think right now is the best guard that we have in college football. And the Aggies have looked the part so far with the 9th best pass blocking grade in the country at 85.6. Now, Dalton, a pretty interesting development so far through 2 weeks for A&M. Their offense, which we thought would have one of the best run games in the country with that offensive line, with Marcel Reed and all the deep, stable running backs they have, they've only run the ball on 38% of their plays, which is the 7th lowest rate in the Power 4 through 2 weeks. That may change going forward in this one against Notre Dame's defensive line, which is better in run defense than it was in pass rush against Miami. But I'm looking at, too, Texas A&M, are they going to rely on Marcel Reed as a passer as much as they have in the first 2 games, or will we see the running game for A&M that we thought would be so good entering the year play a lot more?
Well, you wonder if they're just used in a couple of games against UTSA and against Utah State to just get Marcel Reed reps, right? Because that's going to be a big X factor. I think it almost feels like we know with this offensive line, and we know with their backs, and we know with Marcel Reed as the quarterback, we know Texas A&M can run the football, right? Yeah. I mean, we saw it all year last year. That was the best part of their offense. But adding balance to it is actually what could make them a playoff team. And if Marcel Reed is at least, for the season, let's say an 80-grade passer for the season with the way they can run the ball, then that makes a lot of sense that they want to balance it out and get him reps. Because, look, even in a game like this, Notre Dame's a great defense. It'll be real hard to beat them one-dimensionally. That's what happened last year. I mean, the biggest reason A&M only scored 13 points in this game last year is because Connor Wegman just had nothing against this secondary. Absolutely nothing. Running the ball, they were okay. Le'Veon Moss looked good, right? Amari Daniels, right? I mean, they can run the ball. I think physically they can play with Notre Dame. The balance was the problem last year. They were incapable. Both teams were kind of incapable of throwing the football in this game, but Leonard at least had an answer with his legs for Notre Dame. Connor Wegman just had nothing. They just, at a certain point, Texas A&M was incapable of throwing the football. They have to be capable of it. I like what they're putting in for Reed. I like what Mario Craver's got going on the outside. Obviously, Kevin Concepcion. They've got weapons to work with, too. I think A&M trying to find balance in some of these more warm-up kind of games might actually work to their advantage moving forward.
So with Notre Dame's back against the wall, only in week 3 now, going against Texas A&M, will they pull it off against a top 20 opponent, or will A&M send Notre Dame to an 0-2 start to the season?
You think this is the hardest game to pick this week? This might be.
It's up there. It's certainly up there.
This is a nightmare to try. This is one of those games that I feel like no matter what I pick, I'll be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
That's how I felt about Ole Miss Arkansas, too. I just have no idea.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm kind of with you. This is a tough one, but it would be hard to believe that Notre Dame, as much talent as they have, would be 0-2. But the weird part of this for me, I always actually thought they were more likely to lose this game than the Miami game. And now they've lost the Miami game, and I'm sitting here going, wait, is this the reality we're living in now with Notre Dame 0-2 in that 10-2 scenario? Is that what we're going to do? And you know what? With the amount of improvement, and they had a bye week, and maybe they had some really good practices, but the amount of improvement they need in the trenches, I don't know if that can be made up in a week and a half worth of practice. I'm going to take Texas A&M to get their revenge.
Wow. I'm
going to take them. Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, went down to College Station last year, got a big week 1 win, sent A&M's offense into a little bit of a tailspin for a bit, and then Marcel Reed came in, they righted the ship. I'm going to take A&M 23-20. I think Mike Elko is he's going to load up the run. He's going to make C.J. Carr beat him. I think this balance in A&M's offense is good. And keep in mind, like I just mentioned, this was not Marcel Reed last year. This was Connor Wegman, and he really struggled in this game. This is a different offense with Marcel Reed. This is a different set of receivers that they got in the portal. They can still run the football. Le'Veon Moss is healthy. I'm going with it. I'm going to take A&M to get their revenge on the road, 23-20.
I'm taking Notre Dame 24-23. It should be a phenomenal ball game. I do think Notre Dame will start the year off 1-1. They have not been 0-2 since 2022 when they lost to Ohio State in week 1 and then Marshall in week 2, and they finished 9-4 that year. I don't think it'll happen this year. I got Notre Dame winning this game 24-23, and they were 1-1 to start last year too, Dalton, and they rattled off to 10 straight wins at the end of the year to finish 11-1 in the season. Yep. I think another part we didn't really mention that much is A&M in that week 1 game against UTSA. They let Robert Henry run for 177 yards. In that game.
I watched that back, and that was one where I don't think it's at all that they're a bad run defending team.
I don't think so either.
They came out that when I watched how the way they were fitting the run, I think they missed 18 tackles on the ground in that game. It was something. The tackling was that looked like a defense that was in week 1 and was feeling rusty. Now, I'm not saying this is Jeremiah Love. You better not be rusty against Jeremiah Love.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm picking Notre Dame too. I think Jeremiah Love will have a big game. A&M is 103rd in tackling grade, outside the top 50 in run defense grade. I think it'll be better as the season goes on. But that game right there showed me, okay, this is an avenue for Notre Dame to. In week 1, they didn't rely on Jeremiah Love at all. It was C.J. Carr that really carried that offense. In week 3, I think Jeremiah Love will be the guy that kind of carries this offense to a win.
It's a big point. I think the fits and the tackling and that was the same idea. UTSA spread them out because they're a very spread out RPO-based offense. They created that space through formation. I think Denbrock needs to do this. I think if Notre Dame comes out early and they put 2 and 3 tight ends on the field and try to get heavy, I think it's the wrong way to go about it. I'm spreading them out with formation with those receivers and then working into light boxes. That's exactly how UTSA had that success. And then you make one guy miss. One guy on the second, Torian York, you make him miss a tackle, and then you have space to work with between the tackles.
So Mike Denbrock, please give Jeremiah Love more than 11 carries in this game. That's all I'm asking for. Give the best running back in America more than 11 carries in another huge bowl game after only 11 carries in week 1 against Miami. But I have Notre Dame winning. Dalton's got Texas A&M winning, which should be a massive, massive game on Saturday night. Another massive game Saturday night between Florida and number 3 LSU, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Really, Dalton, Florida is desperate for a massive win right now because they were 8-5 last year. They entered year 4 of the Billy Napier era with college football playoff aspirations. The Gators returned plenty of talent from last year's team, including a sophomore quarterback in DJ Lagway. They entered the year number 15 in the AP poll, the first time they were ranked in the preseason poll in 4 years. But those playoff hopes were quickly dashed in week 2 when the Gators were upset at home by an unranked team at the time in USF. Now Florida is staring down the barrel of one of the hardest remaining schedules in college football. I believe right now it's the 3rd hardest remaining schedule in PFF Power Rankings. And they start off with number 3 LSU on the road. Another loss for Florida would put the Gators at 1-2 on the season and increase the pressure even more on head coach Billy Napier. So LSU, who looked really good against Clemson in week 1, they won that game. They beat Louisiana Tech in week 2 too. LSU right now looks like the favorite to win the SEC this year. If Florida can pull off a massive upset victory, they get their season back on track.
Yeah, you got to go to. Are they calling it the real Death Valley now for the
Might
time
be, yeah.
being? Is that what they're doing? No, the Gators. I mean, you look at this and you go now. Yeah, every game's a must-win because they're all big. You only get 12 of them, but you're at LSU. If you lose this game, you're 1-2. Then you're going to Miami. Okay, and then who knows? Miami looks pretty good. Then you're playing Texas. That's still a darn good football team. Then if after Texas you're going to Texas A&M, the gauntlet doesn't end here. Apparently the gauntlet started with USF, and now it just started a week earlier than they thought. Florida always had this schedule going, but boy, oh boy, I mean they need to figure it out because LSU looks like they're rolling and their defense looks a lot better, and the Gators have lost 6 of the last 7 in Baton Rouge. They've got to find it. It's gut check time for the Florida Gators, I think, a lot sooner than they thought was coming.
So you have the Florida offense in this game, which looked really sluggish in their 18-16 loss to USF last week, going up against an LSU defense that looked really good in week 1 against Clemson. What should we know when the Gators have the ball here?
Really good and really different from what we're used to. 1, not giving up explosive pass plays. That's big. The transfers in the secondary, especially Mansour-Delane at cornerback from Virginia Tech, they look good so far on the secondary, a lot better than they have the last 2 years. The second bit of that is complementing. You know, the defensive coordinators are always talking about marrying the front with the back, right? They're marrying it up front right now because Blake Baker's just blitzing like crazy now. He's gotten to a top 10 blitz rate this year. I believe last year it was outside the top 50. You're talking about Blake Baker. The reason that LSU through 2 games, a big reason that they haven't given up a deep completion yet, is that he's forcing quarterbacks to get it out before they can't even hold the ball long enough. It's exactly why Cade Klubnik struggled in that Clemson game, is that he didn't have enough time to sling it downfield like he wanted to, and then he didn't have enough answers for the pressure coming in all different directions. You don't know where Whit Weeks is coming from. You don't know where Harold Perkins is coming from playing that star position. The defensive line is playing well. Then they're covering well with Delane and Halsey and those guys on the back end. You got a freak of a 6'5" corner and DJ Pickett out there sometimes. First in the nation. They have the most pressures in the nation when running blitzes right now through week 2. Right? This is what Blake Baker's gone all pressure. He's trusting those guys on the back end. He's rushing quarterbacks. And I think with Lagway, you look at last week, DJ Lagway didn't play that well last week, and there was no pressure at all. Only 3 times he was pressured the whole game by USF. Now you're getting a team with studs on defense, with blitz packages from all over the place. And he's got to figure out how to manage through that while also kind of still struggling a bit with his underneath accuracy, because really the way that you have to beat pressure, right, a lot of times is throw it right over it and get it out quickly. Lagway's not doing that yet, and he's not doing it accurately. I'm extremely worried about, and Florida's got a very good offensive line. Jake Slaughter and those guys, boy, they're going to be under the gun in this one.
Yeah.
Because and mentally picking up all these blitzes and protections and making sure everything's checked out up front. Billy Napier is still calling plays. He's got to get all his homework done on all these blitz packages, and I'm sure Blake Baker is coming up with something new. But this is a huge problem for me. Is what just different looks, especially in obvious 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, that Blake Baker is going to throw at DJ Lagway, with his players on the back end also playing really well.
Definitely. So your matchup to watch is how will Florida handle the pressure from LSU? Mine is, can Florida get Garrett Nussmeier under pressure in this game? Because heading into this season, the biggest strength of Florida's defense was their defensive line. And the biggest question mark for LSU's offense was the offensive line. The Gators entered the year by number 4 D line in the country, and LSU lost 4 starters from their offensive line last year. All 4 of them were taken in the 2025 NFL draft. But so far through 2 weeks, those two seem to have flipped. Florida right now is only 74th in team pass rush grade, despite facing an FCS team in Long Island University and USF in week 2. LSU, meanwhile, is 31st in the country in pass blocking grade, even though its first game of the year was against my number 1 defensive line in the country in Clemson. They played really well in that game too, but also a theme of that game was how quickly Garrett Nussmeier got rid of the football. His average time to throw in that game was a blistering 2.09 seconds. The average for most quarterbacks is around 2.7, 2.8 seconds. Garrett Nussmeier, again, only about 2.1 seconds in that win over Clemson. He hardly ever gave the Clemson defensive line a chance to get home in that one. LSU might also employ a similar strategy this week against a Florida defensive line that's very talented still. With Caleb Banks there, Tyreek Sapp, and other guys in that defensive line. They still might try to get rid of the football very, very quickly in this game so that Florida can never get Garrett Nussmeier under consistent pressure.
And that would be an adjustment from last year, because last year in this game, Nussmeier had a 3-second average time to throw. Granted, they were trying to come back late. They were dropping back. They didn't have any run game to speak of in this game against Florida last year, and Florida hit the home runs that they wanted to against LSU's secondary. But again, I think that is similar, a very similar motif to what you saw against Clemson. Which quarterback has an answer for pressure? Nussmeier against Clemson absolutely had it. He sees the field like an NFL quarterback. Does Lagway have that in the same way against Blake Baker? Nussmeier, we saw it already once, 2.1 average time to throw against Clemson. Big time. That was my favorite stat from that game, because it's just, okay, if they can't protect me, I will protect myself. And he's perfectly okay with that. I think that's a big factor into it. Florida's got to dominate up front. But there's also a part where Nussmeier, you got to cover well on the back end too, because he can just get rid of it before you get there anyway.
So will Florida get their season back on track with an upset win over LSU, or will LSU continue to show why they're one of the best teams in college football with a big win against Florida?
I do think Florida's going to come out with a high level of urgency because they know what's at stake in this game, but that's such a tough environment to go into. They've lost 6 of the last 7 in Baton Rouge. It's a night game at Death Valley, the real Death Valley, I guess, of this year. And just I think they're going to come out with urgency. I do. But the improvements this LSU defense has made, I think is a real problem now for the Gators. Because even if you look at Florida's offense in last year's game between these two, they hit like 3 or 4 home runs that kind of set everything up. But LSU, I don't think, played as bad a defensive game as you might think. I think this is real improvement. I think the scheme is really improved. The players are really improved. At the end of the day, I actually think LSU is going to play a really solid defensive game as well, and then manufacture enough offense. I've got LSU 34-20. I really think Florida, they're searching for answers a little bit right now, and you don't want to be at that stage already, having played USF. Right, and lost to USF at home. I mean, this is not going to be a fun environment they're walking into. I think Lagway will be game. There's probably going to be maybe a couple home runs that he does hit. If he doesn't, this could get away from you really quick offensively if you're Florida. I think you really have to get him some easy throws early in the game to get him in a rhythm, but the blitz packages I think are too much. I'm taking LSU.
I have LSU as well, 28-21. I think Florida will lose a second straight game this year. I think Garrett Nussmeier, like the Clemson game, will find quick answers for Florida's pressure in this one. And also on the other side, DJ Lagway could have a lot of issues figuring out Blake Baker's exotic blitz packages. We saw Kate Klubnik look like a shell of himself in that game against LSU's defense with all the blitzes he was sending at him. I'm worried for a young quarterback in DJ Lagway handling those kind of blitzes in this one too. Even though Florida's offensive line has been outstanding so far, but even so, I still think Lagway could struggle.
Well, can he get rid of it quickly? Can he get rid? Just sometimes, dude, don't look for the home run every single play. You saw it last week sometimes against USF. You're holding the football too long. You've got to get rid of the ball in a game like this against a defensive coordinator like this.
We have an LSU fan in the chat saying, wow, unbelievable, they picked LSU after not picking them in week 1.
Well, the new data comes around.
Win some, you lose some, yeah.
Some people change.
He goes, they really hate LSU. They're taking their sweet time getting to this game. Unfortunately, we had so many games to get to. We're going in order of the time they play.
Yeah.
So blame the schedule.
Yeah, play at noon. Play at noon more often.
If they were at noon, we would have done like the first second game.
Play on Thursday. We'll get to you first.
He's got LSU by 14 plus, by the way. So love that. Yeah, you also had LSU by.
He threw the
14.
plus on there. I had 14 exactly. Threw the plus.
He's
on
going
there.
plus.
Gave a little leeway. Okay.
But big game in Baton Rouge on Saturday night between Florida and LSU. Another SEC game on Saturday night. Vanderbilt at number 11 South Carolina, 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time on SEC Network. Is this a trap game for South Carolina? Because South Carolina opens up their SEC slate this Saturday night against Vanderbilt. The Gamecocks have a 16-game win streak over the Commodores that dates all the way back to the 2009 season, but they should not overlook this game, even though they've won 16 in a row against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt right now 2-0, like South Carolina to start the year. And Dalton, really interesting fact here. Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech on the road by 24 points. South Carolina also played Virginia Tech in week 1 on a neutral site, and they beat them by 13 points the week before.
How dare you use the transitive property of football here?
I'm using the transitive property here. I'm not saying it's going to be Vanderbilt outright win. We'll get to that later on. But I am saying don't overlook this game. I know you've beaten Vanderbilt 16 times in a row, but this is still a big game for South Carolina.
Listen, 2+ years of being in the spotlight. Well, obviously, we loved him at New Mexico State, Diego Pavia, and then last year what he did at Vandy. If you're overlooking Diego Pavia and this Commodore team at this point, you just haven't been watching ball. Like, I think it's at the you take this no matter what game. And I'll be honest with you, the game ended 28-7 between these two last year. It was closer for a long time than that score would indicate, especially through just about 3 quarters. Vanderbilt, I thought they played a pretty good defensive game, and they just couldn't get enough explosives on their side. But you overlook this Vanderbilt team at your own risk. We've seen this enough times already. They went into Lane Stadium last week in Virginia Tech. They went into Alabama last year. I mean, they're going to be ready to play this football game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you have the Vanderbilt offense with Diego Pavia, who was stellar in that win over Virginia Tech. I mean, they exploded in that second half, coming back to win that game. What should we know with Diego Pavia going up against a really good South Carolina defense?
So, I mean, last year, South Carolina, especially late in the year, they had a top 5 defense in the country, and they proved it. And they proved it in this game. This was Vanderbilt's worst offensive game last year. They only scored 7 points. They only had 8 rushing yards before contact. Their offensive line, we know there's a bunch of NFL players on South Carolina's defensive line. Some of those guys are gone, but Dylan Stewart also killed him. He was a maniac in this game. 8 rushing yards before contact, 3 explosive runs, all 3 of them by Diego Pavia. 51% pressure rate when he dropped back. Can't have that. So I think, look, the Vanderbilt, they got to be better on the offensive line. They need to get, and I know Pavia is the supernova in this offense, but Cedric Alexander only had 30 rushing yards in this game last year. In a relatively close game that for a long time, Vandy was only down 7-0. They got to get the entirety of their offense going. I really liked how South Carolina's run defense looked with all those new guys. They got to play really well again against an even better offense, a very two-dimensional offense, and I've mentioned it. Pavia gets going with his arm like he did last week. Well, you're going for a ride because that team, they scored 34 points in the second half against Virginia Tech last week. But it's option football. You've got those young linebackers for South Carolina. They're going to be put on the spot. The defensive tackles, it's not TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway anymore, right? You got some younger guys who admittedly, Brownlow Diddy. Obviously, you got some new linebackers that played. Those guys played great against Virginia Tech. They were even better than I thought they would be. If they can perform like that again in this game could look a lot like last year's game between the two where they just eventually grind out a 28-7 win. But you don't overlook Pavia. You don't overlook all the looks they have. And I'm this new transfer receiver, he was at D2 Washburn, Trey Richardson, somebody that really intrigues me for Vanderbilt. I think there's even a further expanded passing game this year for the Commodores that is dangerous.
Definitely. My match watching the other side of the ball is, can Vanderbilt contain Lenore Sellers within the pocket? So even though it's only been 2 weeks so far, Vanderbilt's pass defense seems to have taken a step forward. Last year, they were 90th in pass rush grade, 97th in coverage grade. This year, they're 25th in pass rush grade and 20th in coverage grade. One of only 7 schools in America is top 25 in both. One issue, though, that Vanderbilt had this past weekend was containing Virginia Tech quarterback Kyron Drones. He ran for 10 times for 70 yards and a touchdown against the Commodores with 49 rushing yards after contact. That could be a big problem because Lenore Sellers is one of the best dual threats, maybe the best dual threat that we have in college football. He was second in the Power 4 last year with 581 rushing yards after contact, and he already has 5 explosive runs through 2 games. That's the 10th most of any quarterback in the country. But if Vanderbilt can contain Sellers within the pocket, there is an avenue for this Commodore defense to have success. South Carolina's offense has been far from efficient in their first 2 games against Virginia Tech and South Carolina State. They've placed outside the top 60 in every aspect of PFF grading. They are 102nd in all overall offensive grade, 96th in passing grade, 74th in rushing grade, 89th in receiving grade, 62nd in pass blocking grade, and 108th in run blocking grade. It has not been very pretty for South Carolina's offense through the first 2 games of the season. They're really relying on Lenora Sellers to be Superman for this offense right now. So if you can make him be Clark Kent and not Superman, Vanderbilt has an opportunity to win this game.
Clark Kent would be so offended right now. Anyway, that's always a fun one when we use that phrase. Actually, the one I wanted to use earlier in the West Virginia game was make West Virginia beat you left-handed, and it's only weird because Nico Marchiol is left-handed. But anyway, they actually did a really good job of containing Sellers in this game last year. We're not even including sacks here because we don't do that around here. We count it the right way. Sellers in this game last year had 14 carries for 37 yards and not a single explosive run. His longest run was 9 yards. You do that again against, and you mentioned it, this South Carolina offense has been inconsistent. Mm-hmm. They were raging hot the first drive against Virginia Tech. Then they went cold in the middle. Then they hit the home run to Nick Harbor. And, keep in mind, too, that they've gotten 3 punt return touchdowns from Vakari Swain, which is already more than any player had last year. So you look at this South Carolina offense, they're still kind of finding it. If I'm Vanderbilt or if I'm any team playing South Carolina, I'm doing 2 things. One, to make him hand it off on every single option, RPO, anything. Just like Virginia Tech did for a while. Widen your defensive line out. I would make Rasul Faison or Oscar Attaway or whoever. Go ahead and run between the tackles.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Because he's so much more dangerous out on the edge than I think anybody else is between the tackles. And if they beat me, if they run for 250 between the tackles, then that's on us. Then we're soft, and that's on us, right? The other thing, when you're rushing them, when you're passing, I probably wouldn't blitz them unless I had some special athletes of Georgia or somebody like that. Widen it out and you got to stay in your lane quarterback.
Yes.
That you're blitzing here, right?
Can't Chris Jones it like you did against the Chargers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to rush the
lane
pass.
Integrity, yeah.
When Virginia Tech figured that out, they widened it out a little bit. And they kind of did this mush rush thing where it was like, okay, we're not going to get there in 2 seconds because we're not trying to be in a rush. Let's make him hold the football and think about it. You have to do whatever you can to keep Sellers in. If he breaks outside either hash mark, start praying. That's how this works. And I'm doing everything I can to just keep him within that box. And Vanderbilt, to their credit, again, they played really fast on defense last year. I actually liked the way they played for most of the game last year. Their offense just couldn't capitalize. That's big. But if Sellers... they do need to. South Carolina needs to play a little better on offense. Mm-hmm. They need to get right. It's not fully. It's not. There's moments where it's like, oh boy, here they come, and then it's just not their drive to drive right now.
Yeah. So overall, will Vanderbilt pull off the first upset or first win over South Carolina since 2008? Or will South Carolina make it 17 in a row against Vanderbilt?
This is fun. I love this Vandy team. They're so much fun to watch. Pavia is such a fun quarterback. It's such a fun offense to see, just to see all the different dimensions to it. I do think this is going to be closer than last year's game. And I know this one's at South Carolina instead of at Vandy, but I think Vandy, with another year of experience, it's a very experienced team now with most of those guys from last year's team coming back and obviously Pavia back. I'm going to take South Carolina. I'm going to take it closer than last year, 24-17. I think it's gritty. I think South Carolina is really going to have to – there's going to be moments in this game where they have to will their way to a win. And I am still curious. Again, young defensive front, they passed the test in the Virginia Tech game. I appreciate that. Fantastic game. Now it gets even harder. It's going to be step up here where it's like you get more games where teams can run the ball and all of that in the SEC. This is the first one and a very complicated one. I will take South Carolina at home. I think eventually Sellers, yes, is the best athlete on the field, but it's going to be moments in here where they got to punch through the wall a little bit.
I also take South Carolina closer than you. I have it 27-24. It's going to go down to the wire. I think the Gamecocks will escape with a victory because I think Sellers is the best player on the field in this game, and I think we'll have a couple heroic plays to keep South Carolina off of upset alert this week and beat Vanderbilt. What could be an awesome Saturday night game that we have down there in South Carolina. All right, the final game of our Week 3 preview is a fun one. We got Duke at Tulane.
The Mensa Bowl.
The Mensa Bowl. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Because you just mentioned right there, this is the return of Darian Mensah. Duke quarterback Darian Mensah makes his return this Saturday to Tulane, the school he transferred from this offseason after the Blue Devils made him a Godfather NIL offer of $8 million over 2 years. He and Duke are looking to bounce back this weekend. They lost to number 11 Illinois last week, 45-19 in week 2, a game where Duke had 4 turnovers in that game. Tulane, meanwhile, is looking for a signature victory over its former quarterback as one of the top group of 5 playoff contenders right now. So you got a Duke team looking to bounce back and Darian Mensah looking to beat his former school, and a Tulane team trying to get revenge on Darian Mensah for leaving and also getting a big win for its playoff resume.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you got Duke, and really Duke, we watched that game against Illinois, beat themselves last week.
Yeah.
And yes, Illinois earned it, we are aware. But there is also a part where you turn the ball over 5 times, and there's, I'm sure Manny Diaz went to his team and said, listen, that ain't us. Okay, you can't win any game. You can't beat Tulane. You couldn't beat, name it anybody with 5 turnovers and as many mistakes as they made in that game. So I expect Duke to come out and play better, but Tulane's really good. They got a really good defense. I think the secondary's awesome. Jake Retzloff, that hasn't been there long, but he's played reasonably well through these first 2 games, and they're 2-0. They beat a game South Alabama team last week on the road. They really dominated Northwestern in week 1. They beat them, I believe it was 23-3. So I think Tulane's got a foundation with their offensive line, with their defense. They just need Retzloff, and I think the passing game especially to come together. And you mentioned USF as the group of 5 favorite. This is another one because they already beat Northwestern. And if you get a win over Duke, who knows? And they're going to Ole Miss next week. Tulane's just loading up these out. They must have heard the committee about these quality wins because they put plenty of Power 5 teams on their schedule.
So we actually interviewed new Tulane quarterback Jake Retzloff last year while he was at BYU. And one of the answers he gave us, Dalton, is that he doesn't like blitzes very much. He likes when defenses sit back in coverage. He could read the defense out. That could be a problem considering how often Manny Diaz blitzes.
And this is really the same thing we talked about with Duke against Illinois last week. And when the blitzes got home and they got him in obvious passing situations, they were working. Yeah. Manny Diaz knows what he's doing, especially with these zone blitzes. And for Retzloff, that has always kind of been one issue. He even mentioned to us that it's because it changes the look, right? Mm-hmm. Basic defenses, cover 3, cover 4, cover 1, whatever. They have their basic structure. Really, regardless of, there's a little tweak slide here and there when it comes to whatever formations, 2x2, 3x1. But when you talk about sending these zone blitzes and certain guys coming, certain guys dropping off, you don't know who's rotating where, it does muddy the picture, even though there's less defense. You would think, okay, there's more space, so throw it to the bigger windows. Well, you don't know where the windows are at, so it does make it harder, and it's exactly what Manny Diaz does to you. Jake Retzloff in his career against blitzes, 45.6 passing grade, 62% adjusted completion, 2 big-time throws, and 19 turnover-worthy plays. It's just, and the last 5 games of last year when BYU's offense started to slow down, it was those 5 teams, they started to see this, and they ratcheted up the blitz rates, right? It was a certain percentage. I think it was maybe 35 or so, somewhere in there, their first 7 games of the year. And then from there on, they started heating it up. They said, we're going to get them. And Tulane, look, they've got a good experienced offensive line. I believe it's 4 starters that return on their offensive line this year. They're going to have to pick these things up, and Retzloff's going to have to be more comfortable with pressure coming at him because, look, I know Tulane's going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to play defense. They're going to want to play complementary football. But the same exact thing. And what was Illinois' pass blocking grade last week? Like a 36?
Yeah.
That happens in this game, there's a bigger problem. Because Luke Altmaier did a great job last week of getting the ball out at certain times and keeping himself clean. Retzloff really needs to do the same thing. It would help a lot. I'm sure they watched it, obviously, because it's their opponent. But to watch what Altmaier did last week against this team and keeping his cool and just finding those windows, Retzloff needs to do that. If Tulane gets in obvious passing situations, again, we're going to say it the same thing second week in a row. I think advantage Manny Diaz, advantage Duke, because Retzloff is So uncomfortable when things are not standard, when extra pressure is coming at him. The one thing I will say is using his legs a lot right now. 188 rushing yards through 2 games for Retzloff. And I don't remember him here and there at BYU, and he's a good athlete, we know, but he's using them more often. And I think playing at this G5 level, you're going to see Retzloff run the ball a lot. Maybe he beats it with his legs this week, but he's never really been comfortable with all those different blitzes coming at him.
So really, it's the same exact matchup for me for the other quarterback in Darian Mensah. How will John Sumrall, the Tulane head coach, defensive-minded head coach, how will he defend his former quarterback? Because he has a distinct advantage over Darian Mensah that no other coach will have over Mensah. And the fact that he saw Mensah every day in the Duke facility all of last year, or in the Tulane facility all of last year, and he knows his strengths and his weaknesses too. Darian Mensah has been absolutely outstanding this year when defenses give him time to work in the pocket. He has a 93.8 passing grade when kept clean. That's second among all quarterbacks in college football. 91.5 passing grade when defenses don't send a blitz. That's third in all of college football. Far more issues, though, when defenses try to speed him up. He's 101st in the country in passing grade under pressure, and he's 42nd in the country when defenses blitz him too. He only has a 40.2 passing grade under pressure. Again, that's outside the top 100 in college football. Tulane last year was 34th in America in blitz rate at over 40%, which helped them be 31st in pressure rate at about 36%. John Sumrall, the Tulane head coach, might dial up those blitzes a little bit more because he knows how good Darian Mensah is when he's kept clean and when defenses don't blitz him. He's far more average, if not below average, well below average, when defenses get him under pressure and when he's blitzed.
And you're talking about throwing into a really good Tulane secondary. They picked off Preston Stone 4 times, much to my chagrin, with the upset picks. South Alabama, it was, they played another solid game. Look, Javion White, 90 coverage grade. Kevin Adams, 88 coverage grade. Jaheim Johnson, 79. I mean, they've got guys who can play in this secondary. They don't give up a lot of explosives through the air. So Mensah, we saw a couple of throws that got away from him. And the turnovers started flowing, especially when he was under pressure. You can't have that on this side either. Tulane right now is 12th in the nation in coverage grade. This is a dangerous secondary. They know how to keep things in front of them. They're going to sit back and wait for you to throw into the teeth of it. So at both quarterbacks, it's a weird level of pressure in this game because it's now the best. I think it's the best opponent now that Tulane has played in Retzloff. And again, he's only been there for like a month and a half. And then you got Mensah coming back to Tulane. Kind of a weird environment down there at Yeoman Stadium, and Duke coming off a loss. They really need this win. I think Duke needs this win to bounce back. You don't want to go into ACC play 1-2 because, when we talk about that second place ACC scenario, hell, if you recover and you're 11-1 or even 10-2 somehow and you sneak your way into the ACC title game, you never know where things go. But this is a fascinating matchup, especially the two quarterbacks against these two defenses that, especially in the secondary, 2 of the best in college football.
So, in this game, where Duke's looking to bounce back after losing to Illinois in week 2, and Tulane is looking to pad their playoff resume right now with a win over a Power 4 opponent, who will win in the Darian Mensah Bowl?
I'm going back to the well. I'm gonna do it again. I did it last week in a home game. Illinois responded. Props to you. I'm going to go back to the well. I'm going to take Duke, and I think once again I'm going to try this again. I think Manny Diaz is going to tell this team, listen, we make all those mistakes. You have 5 turnovers, you can't win. You just can't win ball games. But I'm going to trust Chandler Rivers in the secondary. I'm going to trust Manny Diaz in the blitz packages. Tulane, if they're going to win this game, it's just the other way around. Run the football behind this offensive line and shorten. And I will say this, Duke's run defense I thought was awesome last week. I thought they were really good. I thought they shut down Illinois on the ground. They made Altmaier beat them. If they play in run defense as good as they did last week, got a lot of faith in Duke's defense, and then you just have to force Retzloff into a couple of mistakes. And if you're Mensah, just don't force it. This is a good secondary. Don't force it. Even though you might want your revenge, let the revenge happen on the scoreboard. Don't try to light them up when you shouldn't. I'm taking Duke 23-20. I think these two defenses really get after it, but I think Duke escapes this one with a win.
I also have Duke winning this one 31-30. I think they'll bounce back from their week 2 loss to Illinois. I don't think the final score, the final score is 45-19, and credit to Illinois for winning that ball game. But also, Duke messed up a lot in that ball game too. It should have been a lot closer than that. I think Duke will bounce back this week and play better against Tulane, and I think Duke will win this game 31-30. I think Darian Mensah will take down his former school and his former stadium too. I think Duke will get the win over Tulane.
Quick stat, I just wanted to see it real quick with what was the Illinois' final rushing count in this game? Eventually, it was 38 for 152, which is not particularly efficient. I mean, you're talking a flat 4 yards per carry. So it got away from him maybe a little bit late when Illinois was just running the football. But I really thought for most of that game, Duke was really good in run defense. That's going to be a big factor again.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. That wraps up our Week 3 preview show. A lot of great games, as you can see on this desk right here this weekend. A loaded Week 3 slate. And we're going to break it all down on our Sunday morning grade release show at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, breaking down the biggest results from Week 3, breaking down all the grades, the stats told story, the most impressive part of all these games in Week 3. It should be a loaded Sunday show that we've got for you guys. So the next time we'll be live is Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for our Week 3 grade release show. For our producers back there, and Tyler and Eli, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Sunday at 9 a.m. for our Week 3 grade release show.